CEO pulls over to help a pregnant stranger stranded in a storm and ends up discovering an unexpected connection that feels like fate. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The rain fell with an intensity that seemed almost unreal, turning city streets into rushing rivers. In the heart of a busy metropolis, traffic lights flickered in and out, powerless against the raging storm. No one dared to linger outside, and most people stayed in the safety of their homes or offices, hoping the weather would calm soon. Yet, in the midst of this chaos, a sleek black car sped through the flooded roads. Inside was Mason Carter, the CEO of a prestigious real estate development firm. With each arc of the windshield wipers, he caught flashes of lightning illuminating puddles the size of small lakes. Mason's jaw was clenched. He had left an important corporate dinner earlier than expected, ignoring questions from colleagues and subordinates who wondered why their usually composed boss was suddenly eager to be on his own. He couldn't explain it, but a restlessness had settled in his heart all day. Something in the storm's electricity made him uneasy, as if urging him to leave the polished, refined event halls and step into the night. Now, as the thunder boomed overhead, his intuition seemed confirmed. There was a reason he was out here. Up ahead, the glare of his headlights revealed a silhouette moving slowly along the flooded sidewalk. The figure was limping, waterlogged hair plastered to a pale face. Mason slowed down reflexively, pulse kicking up. A pregnant woman? What was she doing out in weather like this? He pulled over, rolling the window down just enough to keep the drenching rain from pouring in. The woman didn't even notice at first. Her shoulders sagged under a drenched coat, and each step seemed an effort. When Mason called out to her over the roar of the storm, she turned with obvious exhaustion. "Are you all right?" he shouted, voice straining to be heard over the pounding rain. She hesitated, eyes darting between the luxurious car and the raging street behind her. Mason sensed her caution but also saw that she was shivering uncontrollably. "Please, get in," he insisted, popping the passenger door open from within. For a moment she looked as though she might refuse. Then another flash of lightning splintered the sky, and the downpour intensified. At last she nodded, tentatively, almost apologetically, and climbed into the passenger seat, slamming the door after her. The car's interior lighting revealed a striking yet exhausted face framed by dripping hair. Her clothes stuck to her skin, and Mason guessed she was in her mid-20s, or maybe a little older. The exhaustion in her eyes hinted at burdens heavier than the storm outside. "Thank you," she managed, though her teeth chattered between each syllable. Mason cranked up the heat. "Don't mention it. I saw you walking out there. This weather is brutal. Are you all right? Are you hurt?" She paused, seemingly unsure how much to reveal to this stranger. He noticed her left hand resting on her rounded belly, a clear sign of advanced pregnancy. Water dripped from her jacket onto the plush leather seat, but Mason didn't care. The more pressing concern was her well-being. "I'm Emma," she offered, voice weak but resolved. I lost my job a few weeks ago, and then somehow everything went wrong at once. I didn't have anywhere to stay tonight, so I was trying to walk to a friend's apartment." She gave a shaky laugh. "Probably should have taken a cab, but my phone died and I'm out of cash." He studied the signs: exhaustion, vulnerability, and a stoicism that belied her dire situation. She was obviously close to her due date. He guessed about 7 or 8 months along. Her stomach was prominent, and she clutched it protectively whenever thunder echoed. "Emma, I'm Mason Carter," he said gently, trying to keep his typical commanding tone at bay. "This storm isn't letting up. If your friend's place is nearby, I can drive you. If not, well, I have a safe place downtown. You'd be welcome to stay the night." His mind whirled with concerns. Bringing a stranger home wasn't something he did. In fact, Mason was known for being guarded in his personal life. Yet something about Emma's distress and the unborn child relying on her triggered a protective instinct in him. She shivered again. I appreciate it, Mr. Carter, but I really don't want to impose. My friend is across town, near Crescent Street. I'm sure she'd let me sleep on her couch. That's still over 15 minutes from here in normal traffic. Tonight, in this weather, it might take an hour or more, assuming we don't get stranded by flooding. And you said your phone is dead. If your friend isn't home or can't help, you'll be stuck outside again. His voice hardened with worry. Though he usually maintained a professional distance, the thought of leaving her alone was unthinkable. Emma seemed to debate silently. She placed a hand on her belly as if seeking guidance from the life growing within her. Then she inhaled shakily. You said you have a place downtown? Yes. My penthouse suite is mostly empty, it's just me. I have a spare room and it's warm. He paused. You'd be safe there. She let out a deep breath. Part relief, part apprehension. All right, just for tonight. Mason nodded, turning the car around carefully, wipers battling the torrential sheets of water. He knew the entire city was on edge from the storm warnings. Yet beneath the tension, he felt a flicker of reassurance. At least Emma was no longer out in that cruel weather. By the time they arrived at Mason's luxury apartment building, the storm had escalated. The valet lane was half flooded, and even stepping from the curb to the lobby door required wading through ankle-deep water. Mason insisted on helping Emma out of the car, one hand supporting her elbow. Inside the opulent marble-floored lobby, the doorman blinked in surprise at Mason's unexpected arrival. Usually the CEO traveled with a private driver, not soaking wet in the middle of the night. The doorman's eyes flickered to Emma, but said nothing. Mason's expression brooked no small talk. They rode the elevator in thick silence, broken only by the hum of machinery. Emma stared at the mirrored walls, hair plastered to her forehead, as if trying to comprehend the sudden shift from storm-lashed streets to a world of quiet luxury. He led her into the penthouse, a sprawling, open-concept living area with floor-to-ceiling windows giving a dramatic view of the stormy city skyline. Lightning flashed, revealing rain streaks that raced down the glass. "Let me find you some towels," Mason offered, speaking more softly now. He flicked on recessed lighting, revealing tasteful modern decor in shades of gray and white. Everything looked impeccably arranged, except for some scattered paperwork on a polished coffee table. While he hurried to a linen closet, Emma stood uncertainly near the entrance, water dripping onto the marble floor. She felt every inch the intruder in such refined surroundings. Her shoes were soaked, her coat tattered from months of repeated use. But the moment Mason returned and draped a large towel around her shoulders, she felt an unexpected wave of gratitude. "Thank you again," she whispered. "I know this is unusual. You don't even know me, yet you're letting me into your home." He gave a small smile. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't need a bigger reason. Then, as if to lighten the mood, he added, "Don't worry, my housekeeping staff can handle a little water on the floor." She managed a slight laugh. "I'll try not to create a flood indoors at least." Mason found her some dry clothes, a loose t-shirt and drawstring pants from his closet, and directed her to the guest bathroom. Once the door closed, he exhaled, only now realizing how tense he'd been. In a single evening, his entire routine had been upended. He was known as a figure of control and confidence in the business world, always one step ahead. Yet if someone had told him he'd bring a pregnant stranger home tonight, he would have dismissed it as impossible. And yet here we are, he thought, glancing at the closed bathroom door. While Emma showered, he tried to distract himself by sifting through emails on his phone. But each time thunder rumbled or the wind howled beyond the glass, he glanced toward the bathroom, worried about how she was faring. He reminded himself that she was simply seeking warmth and shelter, not a new life. Still, a flicker of protectiveness lodged in his heart. Eventually, Emma emerged wearing Mason's borrowed clothes. She had a towel pressed to her damp hair, and her face looked a little more relaxed, though dark circles under her eyes betrayed her fatigue. "That's better," Mason said, gesturing toward a plush armchair. You should sit. Let me get you something hot to drink. Tea or coffee? She hesitated. Tea would be nice. He moved to the sleek, state-of-the-art kitchen, rummaging through a cabinet until he found a selection of gourmet teas. He seldom drank tea himself, so he was relieved to discover a box likely left by a former staff member. Meanwhile, Emma settled into the armchair, the city's storm-lashed skyline behind her. With the warm lighting around her, she almost looked at peace. But Mason noticed how her hand lingered over her stomach, gently rubbing in slow circles. "How far along are you?" he asked quietly, returning with a steaming mug. She took it gratefully, inhaling the soothing aroma. "About 7.5 months. Feels like it could be 8. Time has been confusing lately." Mason nodded, not wanting to pry too deeply yet. "Did you get checked by a doctor recently? Everything's okay with the baby?" She sipped the tea, eyes flicking to the glass windows where lightning still ignited the night sky in jagged bursts. "I haven't been to an appointment in a while. My health insurance lapsed after I lost my teaching job, so I've been managing. I know that's not ideal." He felt an unfamiliar ache in his chest, outrage at her precarious situation, empathy for her struggles. "We'll figure something out," he said, the words surprising even himself. I mean, maybe my company's medical program could help, or I can find some resources. There must be a solution." Emma blinked, tears threatening to surface. "I appreciate it, but you don't have to—" Mason lifted a hand. "I know I don't have to. But Emma, you were out there alone in this storm. You're carrying a child. No one should have to do that by themselves." She looked down, overcome by emotions. For a moment, they both were silent, listening to the wind roar against the glass. Finally, Mason cleared his throat. "Why don't you get some rest? That sofa behind you is actually quite comfortable, but I can set up the guest room for you if you'd prefer." She shook her head, surprising him. "The sofa is fine. I don't want to inconvenience you more than I already have." "That's not a problem at all. The guest room is—" "No, please," she insisted, a mix of gratitude and lingering caution shining in her eyes. "This is already more than I ever expected." "Thank you." Reluctantly, Mason agreed, fetching an extra blanket and cushion. After he arranged them, Emma settled herself, mug of tea still in hand. The scene was quietly surreal. Him, a high-powered CEO known for stoic professionalism, helping this vulnerable woman gently position a pillow for her aching back. A forceful gust of wind rattled the windows once more, and the overhead lights flickered. In that moment, the city beyond looked eerie and otherworldly, but inside Mason's penthouse, a fragile sense of warmth and safety took hold. He lingered, making sure Emma was comfortable. She offered him a soft, appreciative smile. "Mason," she whispered, "thank you. I don't have words." He simply nodded, uncertain of how to respond. The entire evening felt like stepping onto a different path than the one he'd always followed. Deep down he sensed there was no turning back. Something had sparked here, maybe not romance yet, but definitely a connection. As he headed toward his own room, he heard Emma's soft, sleepy voice. "If I had stayed on those streets much longer, I don't know what would have happened. You saved us." It was such a simple statement, but it resonated powerfully. The vow he made in that instant was unspoken, even to himself, yet real as the storm outside. He wouldn't let anything happen to her or her unborn child, not as long as he could help it. Early morning sunlight streamed through the expansive windows of the penthouse, revealing the water droplets still clinging to the glass from the stormy night before. The cityscape below looked as though it had been scrubbed clean by the rain. Pavement glistened, and for a moment, everything felt fresh and new. Mason woke to the soft glow of dawn, momentarily unsure if the events of the previous night had been real or some dream conjured by his restless mind. Then he remembered the figure dozing on his living room sofa. He rose, quickly tidied himself, and stepped into the main area. Emma was already awake, sitting upright with the blanket draped around her shoulders. Her gaze was fixed on the view outside. A gentle silence filled the space, broken only by the faint hum of the building's central heating and the low rumble of traffic far below. As soon as she noticed him, Emma offered a hesitant smile. "Morning," she said, voice still scratchy from lack of sleep. "Morning," he replied, clearing his throat. He felt oddly self-conscious, a sensation foreign to him. In the business world, he was used to being the one in command, confident, purposeful. Yet in front of Emma, who was simply sitting in a borrowed t-shirt, he found himself choosing his words carefully. "How'd you sleep?" She gave a half shrug. "Better than I expected, considering everything. The sofa was really comfortable and your heater works miracles." Her tone held a flicker of humor, though her eyes suggested a deeper exhaustion that rest alone couldn't fix. Mason instinctively moved toward the kitchen. "I can make coffee, or there's still some tea. Do you take sugar or milk?" Emma started to rise, wincing slightly at the effort of standing. "Coffee is great, but let me help. I can't keep letting you wait on me." He waved off her attempt, guiding her gently back to her seat. "Sit. You must be sore. Let me handle it." Though she seemed ready to argue, Emma yielded, gingerly resting a hand on the curve of her belly. Mason noticed she wore the same expression of cautious pride and gentle protectiveness he'd glimpsed the previous night. She had an air of quiet resilience, a trait that stirred something within him. He busied himself with the coffee maker. The aroma soon filled the penthouse, adding warmth to the sleek modern decor. Meanwhile, Emma gazed around, clearly trying to piece together the life of the man who lived here. Every surface shone with minimalistic perfection. A handful of abstract paintings adorned the walls. Aside from the storm's leftover gloom, the space conveyed a sense of refined order, as though carefully curated by someone who prized control in all things. After a few minutes, Mason set 2 steaming cups on the marble kitchen island. He pulled out a bar stool for Emma. She approached slowly, settling onto it with a visible sigh of relief. The closeness allowed him to notice faint lines beneath her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights that likely went back much further than just last evening's ordeal. "Thank you," she said softly, fingers encircling the mug. The warmth seemed to comfort her. "For everything you've done. I know it's a lot." He nodded, leaning forward on the island's countertop. "It's no trouble at all." He paused, uncertain of whether to delve deeper. "Listen, Emma, if you want to call your friend, maybe let them know where you ended up. I can lend you my phone or charger." Her mouth tightened slightly. "My friend, it's complicated. I was staying with her for a bit, but I think she was getting tired of me being there. It's not that she isn't kind, it's just everyone has their own lives and burdens. I don't blame her." Something heavy settled in Mason's chest. "What about family? Anyone you can reach out to?" She shook her head, eyes downcast. "My parents died in a car accident when I was in college. No siblings. My extended relatives are scattered, and we're not close. I had a teaching job that was my lifeline, but the school made some budget cuts. I was one of the first to go." She shrugged, trying to sound casual about it. "And now here I am." He felt a flicker of frustration on her behalf. This woman had carried on alone well into her pregnancy. As Emma resumed sipping her coffee, Mason studied her. She wore a quiet dignity, the stoicism of someone who'd learned to expect little help from the world. Something tugged at him, a protective urge he rarely felt in his carefully managed life. "There must be some assistance programs or a good OB-GYN we can set you up with," he ventured. "I have contacts. Maybe my company's health branch can—" Emma raised a hand gently, stopping him. "Please understand, Mason. I'm grateful for your kindness more than I can express. But I've been managing on my own for a while now. I have some money saved, just not enough for a deposit on a new place, and with the baby on the way, it's been tricky." She hesitated before adding, "And if I'm honest, it's overwhelming to accept too much help from someone I barely know." Mason recognized the caution in her voice, the boundary she needed to maintain her sense of independence. He decided not to push. "I understand," he said, though he truly did not. How could anyone navigate this situation alone? But he respected her choice. "Still, you're welcome here until you figure out your next step." Emma seemed taken aback, blinking rapidly as though unsure she'd heard him correctly. I can't impose on you like that. I was thinking I'd just head out this afternoon once the road's clear." He shook his head resolutely. "Emma, you don't have a phone right now, you have no stable housing, and you're almost 8 months pregnant. Last night was a warning. These storms aren't going away for a while, and the city's dealing with flooding. Let's not risk another situation where you're alone in the worst circumstances." She stared at him, lips parted in silent surprise. Then her expression softened. "That's incredibly generous. I just don't know what I did to deserve—" He swallowed, forcing a small smile. "You deserved basic kindness the moment you were out there in the storm. That's all there is to it." A quiet tear escaped down her cheek. She brushed it away self-consciously. Mason rose, retrieving a box of tissues from a nearby shelf, pretending not to notice her embarrassment. She exhaled shakily, regaining composure. "If I stay, I promise I won't be a bother. And I'll do whatever I can. Cook, clean, something." She trailed off, unsure how to repay him. He handed her a tissue. "You don't owe me anything. Just focus on resting. We'll figure the rest out as we go." A moment passed, charged with a silent understanding. On the surface, it was a conversation about logistics, where she would sleep, how she would manage errands. But underneath, both felt the undeniable weight of stepping across an invisible line. By letting Emma stay, Mason was welcoming not just a guest but an upheaval of his familiar routines. And Emma, by agreeing, was exposing her vulnerability to this man she barely knew. Mason glanced at the time on his phone. He had calls and messages from his office, a reminder that his professional world wouldn't pause just because of last night's events. Normally, a busy morning schedule would have him out the door at sunrise, heading to board meetings or investor briefings. Today, he couldn't bear the thought of leaving Emma entirely on her own without ensuring she'd be all right. "I have a few urgent business matters," he said tentatively, "but I can handle them from here, at least for the morning. Then, if you'd like, we could go out and get your phone fixed or replaced, maybe pick up some essentials for you, and if you feel up to it, I'd like to—" He paused, searching for the right words. "I'd like to take you to a doctor, just a basic checkup. You said you hadn't seen one in a while." Emma felt her breath hitch. She was protective of her independence, but had to admit the relief she felt at the suggestion. "I suppose that would be smart," she conceded quietly. "I've been worried, not knowing if everything's okay. But we can talk about it more after you finish your work. Really, don't let me interfere with your schedule." He nodded. "We'll figure it out together. For now, help yourself to the fridge or anything you need. I'll set up at the dining table to answer a few emails." Emma offered a grateful smile. "Thank you, Mason." She said his name like a gentle reassurance. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. Soon, the penthouse was filled with the muted sound of Mason's fingers tapping away at his laptop and the occasional ring of his phone. Emma wandered the living area, more awake now, and discovered a small bookshelf lined with business titles, biographies, and architectural journals. She ran her hand along the spines, thinking how different this world was from her own. From time to time, she peeked at Mason, noticing how seamlessly he moved between phone calls and typed messages, his face shifting from concentration to brief politeness when he answered a colleague's question. She wondered what his employees would say if they knew their formidable boss had spent the night rescuing a pregnant stranger. The thought almost made her laugh. During a lull in his calls, Mason glanced over at Emma. Their eyes locked for a moment, exchanging a look of shared understanding. Each recognized how extraordinary the last 12 hours had been and how carefully they now navigated this unexpected bond forming between them. After another round of messages, Mason called out, "I ordered groceries. They'll be delivered shortly." He rose from his seat, stretching his arms. "If you're hungry, we can cook something or see what gets delivered." Emma's stomach growled on cue, and she flushed. "I'd love a small breakfast, if that's all right. I can help." He led her to the kitchen with a gentle wave of his hand. The two of them moved around the space, Emma chopping fruit with surprising skill, Mason frying a couple of eggs. The ambiance felt oddly domestic for two people who'd only just met. Outside, the sun shone on skyscrapers, revealing the city's post-storm shine. Between the sizzling pan and the fresh scent of fruit, Emma found herself relaxing. She caught Mason's eye, a smile forming. He responded with a slight grin, one that softened his usually serious features. It was a morning of fragile, quiet beginnings. Both recognized that before them lay unknown territory, shared meals, mutual cooperation, and maybe even fleeting moments of closeness amid the turmoil. In the background of Emma's mind, a voice reminded her that she had to be cautious, that no amount of kindness guaranteed lasting safety. But another part of her, one that had been lonely for so long, clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found the ally she so desperately needed. Meanwhile, Mason sliced bread for toast and stole glances at Emma's soft expression. Was it possible that fate had led him to that rain-soaked street corner last night? He tried not to dwell on such romantic notions. After all, he was a man of logic and strategy. Yet he couldn't deny that something about this encounter was changing him. As they plated their makeshift breakfast, he felt a quiet thrill in the pit of his stomach, as if he were on the cusp of a decision that could alter the very course of his life. Outside, the midday sun had just begun to conquer the lingering clouds, revealing bright patches of blue sky. In a matter of hours, the world seemed transformed from last night's raging storm to a calm, crisp day. Emma and Mason finished their modest breakfast, toast, fruit, and scrambled eggs, and then cleared the plates together. Every so often they caught each other's gaze and exchanged an almost shy smile, as if both recognized that life had taken an unexpected turn in the span of a single night. "I'll just rinse these quickly," Emma offered, bringing dishes to the sink. When she reached for a sponge, Mason gently took it from her. "Let me. You need to rest," he insisted. She couldn't help but let out a small laugh. "Mason, you've already fed me, given me clothes, offered me a place to stay. If you insist on doing the dishes too, I'll have nothing left to contribute." He paused, sponge in one hand, looking slightly torn. "I guess. Just promise not to overwork yourself. He cleared his throat, feeling a subtle flutter of self-consciousness. "I worry about you." His words echoed quietly in the airy kitchen. Emma's smile softened, a warmth tugging at her chest. "Okay," she said, voice gentle. "I promise I'll be careful." When they finished tidying up, Mason settled into a chair near the large windows. He tapped a few messages on his phone, while Emma lingered by the countertop, occasionally sipping water. She glanced at the city skyline, crisp and gleaming after the storm. In a few hours, they planned to visit a phone store so she could replace her dead, waterlogged device. Afterward, they would go to a doctor's appointment that Mason was hastily arranging. Emma felt nerves flutter in her stomach. For months, she'd been alone, unemployed, evicted from her tiny apartment, drifting from couch to couch. She'd long dreaded the day she'd have to face a medical exam with no health insurance or stable support. Yet now, within 24 hours, she'd met someone offering to accompany her step by step. It was surreal. Eventually, Mason stood. "I managed to get in touch with a contact at a private clinic downtown. They can see you later this afternoon if that's not too soon." His tone held a quiet undercurrent of concern. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That's good," Thank you. He inclined his head, then checked his watch. We'll leave in about an hour to handle your phone situation first. That is, if you're feeling up to it. I'm all right, she assured him, pressing a hand gently over her abdomen. The baby has been quite active this morning, which I'll take as a good sign. She hesitated before adding, I'm a little nervous about the appointment, but I know it's necessary. Mason's expression softened. You don't have to explain. I can't imagine how stressful this must be, especially without support. He caught himself before he said more. Some deeper question lingered. Where was the baby's father in all this? Emma had mentioned no one, but he reminded himself it wasn't his place to pry, especially not now. If at any point you change your mind or feel uncomfortable, just say the word. She nodded, appreciating how he kept the conversation free of judgment or demands. I will, she promised, but I think it's time. I need to know if everything's on track. They left the penthouse an hour later. Mason donned a sleek navy suit jacket, though he'd left the tie behind to keep the day's errands more informal. Emma borrowed one of his black umbrellas, noticing the continued soggy state of her old coat. The doorman greeted them with professional politeness, only allowing a hint of curiosity to cross his features when he saw Emma. Regardless, he swiftly helped them hail a car. As they rode the elevator down, Emma felt her heart pounding. This was the first time she'd stepped out in public with Mason, and a small part of her worried about how she looked. She wore a simple maternity blouse Mason had fetched from a nearby shop that morning. One of his assistants had arranged a rush delivery, plus the same loose-fitting pants from before. She reminded herself that vanity had no place here. She needed a functioning phone, prenatal care, and safety for her baby. But still, maybe she wanted to appear confident in front of Mason, who exuded a natural poise that came from years of corporate leadership. She forced her shoulders to relax, eyes fixed on the polished elevator doors. When they reached the lobby, the doorman greeted them again, this time with an umbrella at the ready. The sky was mostly clear, but small puddles lingered. The city bustled with renewed energy, people returning to their daily tasks after the storm's interruption. Mason led Emma to a black SUV waiting by the curb, driven by an older chauffeur who nodded respectfully. "Morning, Mr. Carter," the chauffeur said, eyeing Emma politely but without overt surprise. Perhaps he'd been trained well in the art of discretion. "Shall I take you to the phone store on Center Avenue?" "Yes, please, Mark," Mason replied. He helped Emma into the back seat, then followed after her. A swirl of unfamiliar sensations enveloped Emma. She was not used to such formality, nor the quiet efficiency of a private driver. She clutched the borrowed umbrella, feeling slightly out of place. The drive was smooth, and within 15 minutes they arrived at a high-end electronics store. Mark opened the door for them, and Mason guided Emma inside. The shop's interior boasted sleek displays of smartphones and tech accessories, bright lights reflecting off pristine floors. A well-dressed clerk hurried over as soon as they stepped in, face lighting up with recognition at the sight of Mason. "Mr. Carter, good to see you. How can we help today?" Mason glanced at Emma, encouraging her to speak. She cleared her throat, summoning her confidence. My phone was destroyed in the storm. I need a replacement, something with reliable coverage. My old plan was, well, let's say it's not functional anymore." The clerk nodded sympathetically. "We can set you up. Do you have a budget or preferred brand?" Emma hesitated. Money was a constant worry. But before she could respond, Mason stepped in. "Quality matters. Give us something with a sturdy build and good battery life. She's going to need reliable service. Let's add it to my account." Emma's eyes widened. "Mason, you don't have to." He met her gaze, unyielding. "It's one less headache for you. Please, let me. It's important you have a phone." She started to protest further, but a gentle look from him halted her words. Her pride wrestled with gratitude, but she recognized the necessity. "Thank you," she finally murmured. The clerk, sensing this dynamic, quietly went about selecting a robust smartphone model. While waiting for the device to be activated, Emma and Mason strolled through the aisles, examining headphones and accessories as if perusing a casual shopping list. She felt a mix of relief and guilt. Part of her worried about how she'd ever repay him. Another part whispered that maybe he truly didn't mind. Maybe he found meaning in helping her. She pressed her lips together, letting that thought settle. Eventually, they wrapped up the purchase. The clerk handed Emma a shiny new phone, already charged, with a monthly plan set up under Mason's corporate account. It felt surreal to have such an expensive piece of tech in her hand. Mason offered the clerk a polite nod, ignoring the man's subtle curiosity. "You ready?" Mason asked, gently touching Emma's elbow. She glanced at him and exhaled. "Yes, more than ready, I think." They headed back to the car where Mark was waiting. Before Emma climbed inside, she noticed Mason giving instructions to the driver in a low voice, something about directions and a new route. When she settled into her seat, Mason joined her. "Everything okay?" she asked, scanning his expression. He nodded. "Yes. I was just confirming the best route to the clinic. It's near the riverfront district, so traffic can get a bit congested. We'll head there now if you're up for it." Emma swallowed her nerves, rubbing her hands lightly over her belly. "Let's go." The clinic was a modern, glass-front building overlooking a tree-lined boulevard. Inside, the reception area gleamed with polished floors and comfortable waiting chairs, the walls adorned with calming abstract art. Mason spoke briefly with a receptionist, who smiled at Emma and then led them to a private waiting room rather than the main lobby. Emma guessed this courtesy was extended because of Mason's influence or connections. A petite nurse appeared, greeting them warmly. "Emma? The doctor will see you in a moment." She ushered Emma through a corridor. Mason began to follow, but the nurse hesitated. "Oh, are you—" Mason cleared his throat. "If Emma would like me to come along, I'm happy to, but if you need privacy, I can wait here." Emma offered a small, appreciative smile. "I'd like it if you were there, unless it's not allowed." The nurse looked between them and nodded, understanding the situation. "That should be fine. This way." They stepped into a cozy examination room, pastel-colored with framed posters about prenatal care. Emma's heart pounded. She'd put off a proper checkup for too long. The nurse took basic vitals, blood pressure, temperature, heart rate, while Emma answered questions about her medical history. She noticed Mason standing at a polite distance, eyes wandering over the diagrams of fetal development pinned to the walls. When the doctor arrived, a tall woman with kind eyes, Emma relaxed slightly. Dr. Harper introduced herself, shook Emma's hand, then Mason's. She skimmed the chart the nurse had compiled. "Let's see," Dr. Harper said gently. "You're around 30 weeks along by your last estimate, correct?" Emma nodded. "Yes, that's what I believe." "All right. Let's do a basic ultrasound and see how things look. Have you felt consistent fetal movement recently?" Emma nodded again, relief creeping in. "Yes, plenty of kicking and rolling, especially in the mornings." "Good sign. We'll check the baby's heartbeat, measure growth, and see if you need any immediate interventions." Emma lay back on the exam bed, trembling inside. Mason stood near her head, offering a reassuring nod as she stole a glance at him. Dr. Harper chatted calmly as she prepared the ultrasound machine, explaining each step. Soon, cold gel touched Emma's abdomen, causing her to inhale sharply. The wand glided over her skin, and static images flickered on the screen. Mason leaned forward, gaze riveted. His world was boardrooms and budgets, but now it shrank to the flicker of a tiny form on the monitor. Within moments, a rapid heartbeat filled the room, an unmistakable whoosh-whoosh that drew every ounce of attention. Emma felt a surge of emotion so strong it brought tears to her eyes. "There's the baby," Dr. Harper announced, smiling. "Heartbeat is strong, measuring well within the normal range. Growth appears consistent with about 31 weeks. Everything I see suggests a healthy pregnancy." Emma's chest felt tight with gratitude. She blinked back tears, recalling the months of worry, the nights spent tossing and turning on someone else's couch, not knowing if her baby was developing properly. Hearing that steady rhythm was like a miracle. She shot Mason a trembling smile. He swallowed hard, returning her look. "That's really good," he managed quietly, voice thick. The significance hit him square in the chest. He was a stranger to this child, yet somehow he felt invested, relieved that this small life was thriving. Dr. Harper measured the baby's head circumference, checked fluid levels, and confirmed no immediate red flags. "You should schedule regular visits now, especially as you're in the final stretch. We can help arrange that. Do you have insurance or a plan in place?" Emma's shoulders slumped slightly. "I lost my coverage. I've been out of work, but I'm hoping to fix that soon." Mason spoke before she could say more. "We'll make sure it's taken care of. In the meantime, is there a way to set up some interim solution here at the clinic? Even if it's out of pocket, I'd like Emma to continue receiving care." Dr. Harper nodded. "We can discuss options. Let's not let finances prevent you from proper prenatal care. Our billing department can work out a payment plan if needed. The important thing is you stay healthy." Emma reached for Mason's hand on impulse, a surge of gratitude overwhelming her. She half expected him to flinch, but he didn't. His fingers closed gently over hers, warm and steady. The quiet moment passed between them, unspoken promises shimmering in the air. She was grateful, beyond words, for the fact that he was standing here, unwavering in his support. The rest of the appointment went smoothly. Dr. Harper offered dietary advice, recommended vitamins, and urged Emma to rest whenever possible. Emma listened carefully, comforted by the normalcy of it all. The nurse handed over pamphlets for birthing classes and postpartum resources, which Emma accepted with a subdued murmur of thanks. By the time they left the exam room, Emma felt lighter, as if a weight had slid off her shoulders. She had a new phone, a sense of direction for medical care, and the knowledge that her baby was developing well. And she wasn't alone, not this time. While Mason handled paperwork at the reception desk, Emma stepped out into the hallway, taking a moment to breathe. Her mind buzzed with a mix of relief and uncertainty. She wasn't sure how long she could remain in Mason's orbit without crossing lines or complicating his life. Yet a quiet part of her didn't want to leave. Whatever unspoken bond was forming, she found solace in it. Mason approached, tucking receipts into his jacket pocket. "All set," he said quietly. "Shall we head home? You must be exhausted." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "Home," she repeated softly. The word lingered in the air. For the first time in months, it didn't feel empty. "Yes, let's go." Together they walked out into the bright afternoon. Mark had the SUV waiting by the curb. The city bustled around them, normalcy resuming after the previous night's storm. But for Emma and Mason, everything felt subtly changed. The roar of traffic and the hustle of pedestrians washed over them like background noise. They climbed into the car, each lost in their own thoughts. Gratitude, relief, a cautious hope for what might lie ahead. As they pulled away from the clinic, Emma glanced at her reflection in the window. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her posture tense with leftover adrenaline. Yet there was a spark in her eyes she hadn't seen in a long time. She placed a hand over her abdomen, feeling the baby's gentle shifts. Mason's presence beside her felt reassuring, almost natural. Neither spoke for several blocks, content with a companionable silence. Then Mason's phone buzzed, snapping him out of his reverie. Another work call, no doubt. He hesitated, looking at Emma. She just nodded, indicating it was fine to pick up. As he answered, speaking in low tones about some business deal, Emma gazed down at her brand-new phone. She started tapping out a message to her friend, letting her know she was safe and had found a temporary place to stay, though she left out the details of exactly who was helping her. When Mason finished the call, he set the phone on his lap. "I might have a conference call tonight," he admitted with a faint grimace. "It's important, but I'll try not to let it take too long. Are you okay with me working at home? Emma smiled gently. Of course, this is your life, your career. I'm the one invading your space. He shook his head. Don't call it that. You're not invading anything. Silence again, more charged now. An emotion Emma couldn't name flickered in the air, fragile and tentative. She wondered if he felt it too, the sense that they were on the verge of something both comforting and terrifying. They approached the penthouse building. The doorman signaled them in, and once again they were met with discreet courtesy. Mark parked and handed the keys to the valet, while Mason helped Emma up the steps. The day had left her tired, physically and emotionally, but also hopeful. As they rode the elevator skyward, Emma pressed a palm to the mild ache in her lower back. The baby was making its presence felt, and she realized she might need to rest soon. Mason seemed to notice her discomfort. "Let's make sure you take it easy the rest of the day," he said softly. "We can order dinner in. Any cravings? Italian? Thai?" Emma couldn't recall the last time someone asked what she wanted for dinner, simply to please her. She managed a small laugh. "Thai sounds nice," she said. "Maybe something mild." He nodded, watching the floor numbers light up. Then he lifted his gaze to her, eyes warm. "Sounds perfect." When the elevator doors slid open, Emma stepped out into the penthouse, inhaling the faint scent of cedar and fresh air. Mason followed, letting the door close behind them. At that moment, the space felt a little less like his lonely fortress in the sky, and a little more like a real home, for both of them. Afternoon sunlight flooded through the penthouse's towering windows, casting long, slanted beams across the polished floors. Emma, settled into the plush sofa, glanced up at these patches of warmth with a quiet sense of gratitude. Gratitude for Mason's help, for the good news at the doctor's office, and for a moment of rest that she sorely needed. Mason stood by the kitchen island, phone pressed to his ear. His brow was furrowed, but he spoke in low, measured tones. Even if Emma couldn't make out his words, she recognized the cadence of negotiation, the subtle shifts in his posture. She'd never known someone who balanced that much pressure so gracefully. Whenever he glanced her way, however, his features softened briefly, as if the stress lifted. She rested against a pillow, placing her hand on her abdomen. The baby nudged gently, little kicks reminding her of the new life growing inside. Was it only yesterday she'd been trudging through the storm, with nowhere to go and no certainty of tomorrow? Now she was in a penthouse, feeling almost safe, a sensation so foreign she didn't know how to handle it. Mason ended his call, sighing as he set the phone down. "All right," he said, walking over. "That was my chief financial officer. We're finalizing some investments in a new development, and there are complications with zoning. I might have to do a video meeting tonight." Emma nodded, pushing herself up slightly. "Go ahead. I don't want you to feel like you have to rearrange everything just because I'm here." He gave her a brief smile. "I know, but I also don't want to neglect you. Let me order us some food. Thai, as discussed. After we eat, I'll take care of the meeting. Shouldn't last more than an hour." Emma massaged a mild twinge in her lower back. "Thai sounds perfect. And don't worry, I'll be fine." Mason reached for his phone again, stepping aside to place the dinner order. He spoke in hushed, confident tones, coordinating the delivery. During that brief moment, Emma's gaze drifted around the penthouse once more, examining details she hadn't noticed before: the abstract sculpture near the window, the row of business journals on a glass bookshelf, the perfectly arranged furniture that gave the living space a showroom-like quality. Little by little, she realized Mason's home seemed designed for function and style, but not necessarily for comfort or community. There were no photographs, no casual clutter, no signs that family or friends gathered here often. When he rejoined her, she saw traces of that same lonesomeness in his eyes, though hidden behind a veil of composure. "Dinner will be here in about 30 minutes, he said, taking a seat in an armchair across from her. "Thank you," she replied, letting her fingertips trace patterns on the sofa cushion. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet wasn't awkward, but it was charged with unspoken curiosity. Finally, Emma decided to gently bridge the gap. "Mason, I don't know much about you. I mean, I know you're a CEO. I see how busy you are. But I don't even know which company you run." He gave a rueful half-smile, as if recalling he'd never introduced himself properly beyond that chaotic night. "Carter Developments. We specialize in commercial real estate. Office towers, luxury apartments, mixed-use projects. My father started it decades ago, and I took over after I got my MBA. Been trying to expand ever since." Emma's expression brightened with interest. "That's impressive. Do you enjoy it?" He paused, considering. "I do. Most of the time, it's a lot of responsibility. Hundreds of employees, shareholders, big clients. But I like building things, seeing an idea take shape and stand tall in a city skyline." A note of enthusiasm crept into his voice. "And I like creating jobs, bringing new opportunities to areas that need them." She nodded, empathizing with the passion in his tone. "What about family?" she asked softly. "It's just you here?" Mason's eyes flicked away for a moment. "My parents are both gone. My mother passed away when I was in college, my father a few years later. I don't have siblings, extended relatives, not really close." His voice lowered. "So yes, it's just me. I have staff, of course, a driver, a housekeeper who comes in part-time, people who keep things running, but no one else lives here." Emma's heart twisted. She saw parallels between their lives. Both had lost parents, both navigated the world without that immediate familial anchor. "I'm sorry," she said gently. He offered a tight smile, acknowledging her empathy. "Life goes on," he murmured. "And yours? I know you've mentioned losing your parents, but are you truly on your own? What about the baby's father?" The question hung in the air. Emma's stomach clenched, though she knew it was bound to arise sooner or later. She swallowed. "He left," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was overjoyed, and he seemed happy enough at first. But then things started getting hard. We had money issues. I lost my job. She forced herself to meet Mason's gaze. "He walked out, said he wasn't ready. I haven't seen him in months." A flicker of anger passed through Mason's expression, quickly reined in. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "That must have been so hard." Emma nodded, eyes downcast. "Yes, but I'm not the first single mother in the world. I'll manage." Yet even as she spoke the words, she felt the weight of that promise pressing down again. They fell into a hush, both processing the fragments of each other's stories now laid bare. The sound of the elevator chimed, breaking the moment. Mason stood, checking a wall-mounted screen that displayed building security camera feeds. That should be dinner. A few minutes later, a delivery person was escorted to the door by the doorman. Mason thanked them, taking 2 large bags of fragrant Thai food. He set them on the kitchen island, the tangy, spicy aromas instantly filling the penthouse. Emma inhaled appreciatively, her appetite waking up. They sat at the sleek dining table, a glass surface with minimalistic chairs, unpacking containers of pad thai, green curry, and steamed vegetables. Mason passed her utensils and poured water into tall glasses. Emma recalled how rarely she'd enjoyed a real sit-down meal in recent months. Usually she ate whatever she could afford on the go. Once they began to eat, the conversation turned lighter. Emma admitted she'd once wanted to travel the world, though her teacher's salary never allowed for much beyond short road trips. Mason shared a bit about a recent trip to Tokyo for a business conference, how he loved the city's contrast of ultra-modern skyscrapers and centuries-old temples. They compared notes on favorite foods, each discovering they both liked mild heat in their curries. Partway through the meal, Emma felt another gentle kick, causing her to shift in her seat and place a palm on her side. She let out a faint laugh. "I think the baby likes the curry." Mason paused, chopsticks mid-air. "Must be a good sign," he said quietly, glancing at her stomach with an almost shy curiosity. He didn't want to intrude, but she saw the question in his eyes. She offered a gentle nod. "Do you want to feel?" Her voice was a bit tentative, unsure of whether such a gesture crossed a line, but something about his kind presence made her take the leap. Mason set down his chopsticks. He approached, carefully placing a warm hand on the curve of her belly, his features unsure at first. Then, another kick. His eyes went wide in wonder, and a soft gasp escaped him. "That's incredible," he breathed. The awe in his voice was palpable. Emma felt tears prick the back of her eyes. She fought them off, touched by his genuine reaction. "It is," she whispered. "It's why I've kept going, even when everything else felt like it was falling apart." He withdrew his hand gently, returning to his seat with a thoughtful expression. They resumed eating, but their exchange had ignited a silent closeness, a sense that their bond had moved beyond polite gestures. This small, almost intimate moment of feeling the baby's movement was something Emma had not shared with many, and Mason, for his part, looked struck by the reality of new life, so different from the steel and glass realm he lived in. When the meal ended, Emma insisted on clearing some plates, while Mason packed leftovers into containers. They moved in unison through the kitchen, comfortable and quiet. She caught glimpses of his face. He seemed introspective, as though the baby's kicks had awakened some reflection inside him. Afterward, Mason excused himself to prepare for his conference call. "I'll be in my office just down the hall," he explained, guiding Emma to a small lounge area. "If you need anything, feel free to knock." She glanced around. The lounge boasted a wide TV, plush armchairs, and a couple of bookshelves. "I'll be fine," she assured him. "Take your time." He lingered a moment, eyes on her. "All right. Don't hesitate if you get uncomfortable or need help." She smiled. "I promise." Then he left, footsteps echoing through the corridor. Emma settled into an armchair, letting out a slow breath. Her body still felt the day's exertions. The new phone purchase, the doctor's appointment, the emotional roller coaster of sharing her story. She glanced at the TV remote on a side table but decided against turning it on. Instead, she reached for a book on the nearest shelf, something about architectural design. It looked dense, full of glossy photographs, probably part of Mason's professional interests, she assumed. Curiosity got the better of her. She flipped through the pages, seeing pictures of stunning skyscrapers, futuristic cityscapes. She found herself wondering how Mason had grown into such a poised, driven entrepreneur. What had shaped him? Was he always so stoic, or had heartbreak and responsibility forged that steely exterior? In the hallway, she heard a muffled voice, his voice, speaking on a call. She couldn't catch the words, but the tone suggested negotiation, firm yet polite. No doubt sealing deals, juggling investors. She closed the book, gazing out the lounge window. Twilight had begun to drape the skyline, the city lighting up in a tapestry of neon signs and street lamps below. Time passed. Emma realized she was dozing off, lulled by the quiet and the soft chair. After an indeterminate stretch, she blinked awake to see Mason standing near the doorway. She straightened, heart fluttering at his sudden appearance. "Oh, I guess I fell asleep." His phone was still in hand, but the call must have ended. "How are you feeling?" he asked, stepping closer. His voice was gentle. She rubbed her eyes, noticing the penthouse lamps had been switched on. "Better. I didn't realize I was so tired." He slipped the phone into his pocket, the tension of business fading from his features. "Are you okay? Does your back hurt?" She stretched a bit, wincing at a mild ache. "A little, but I'm all right. Dr. Harper said that's normal at this stage." Mason eased onto a nearby chair. If you need anything like a maternity pillow or some heat pack, let me know. I can have my driver pick something up tonight." The offer made her chuckle softly. "You really spoil me, you know?" A hint of color rose in his cheeks. "Sorry if I'm overdoing it, you shouldn't have to be in pain." She reached across the gap, laying her hand lightly over his. "You're not overdoing it. Thank you." The gesture was small, but it conveyed more than simple gratitude. It was acknowledgement of the closeness forming between them. His eyes flicked to her hand, and for a moment Emma wondered if she'd crossed a boundary. But then he turned his palm, threading his fingers gently with hers. The warmth and pressure of his grip reassured her more than words could. "Emma," he started quietly, seeming to wrestle with his own thoughts. "I know this is sudden. Us, living in the same space. You have your life and I have mine, but if at any point you want something different to move on, know that I'll understand." He hesitated, then added, "I just don't want you to feel like you owe me. You owe me nothing." Her throat tightened. "I know," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been kind without asking anything in return, but I'm not ready to leave yet. I don't have anywhere else that's safe, and if you truly don't mind me staying—" She trailed off, eyes brimming with a mix of relief and vulnerability. Mason shook his head, his expression resolute. "You can stay as long as you need. In fact, I want you to stay." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. The flicker of city lights from the windows seemed to pulse in tune with the silence. Emma's heart pounded, both touched and cautious. She recognized that her presence would change his life. It already had. And yet, everything he offered seemed genuine. An open door, a protective promise. She squeezed his hand slightly as if sealing a silent agreement. "Then I'll stay," she whispered. A small, relieved smile curved his lips. He gently withdrew his hand from hers as if afraid his closeness might overwhelm her. "It's been a long day. You should get some real sleep tonight. The guest room is prepared now. Fresh linens, everything you need. Better than the sofa." She felt a tug of warmth in her chest. "I'd like that. Thank you." They stood. Without speaking, they walked side by side through the penthouse, Mason guiding her to a door at the far end of the hall. He opened it, revealing a spacious bedroom with calm, neutral decor. A large bed with crisp white sheets, a plush armchair in one corner, and soft ambient lighting that gently illuminated the walls. "I'll be in my room if you need anything," he said, lingering at the threshold. "Bathroom is just next door, and there's a phone on the nightstand. Internal line if you need to call me, or the doorman." Her eyes roamed the room, heart brimming with gratitude. "It's perfect." He nodded, then hesitated. Emma sensed he wanted to say something more, but he held back. Finally, he gave a slight bow of his head, stepping away. "Good night, Emma." She watched him retreat toward his own room, quietly closing her door. Standing in the gentle glow of the guest suite, she inhaled the faint scent of freshly laundered sheets. The reality of this day sunk in. A brand new phone, a doctor's confirmation of the baby's health, a meal shared with someone who genuinely cared. It felt surreal, like a dream she feared would vanish by morning. Crossing to the bed, she carefully lay down, mind buzzing with thoughts of Mason's kindness, the baby's well-being, and a future that only a day ago seemed impossibly bleak. Now there was a glimmer of hope. The ceiling overhead appeared soft and hazy as her eyes fluttered with fatigue. Her final waking thought was a quiet prayer of thanks for the baby's heartbeat, for the storm that had put her in Mason's path, and for the sense that, at least for now, she had found shelter in more ways than one. Morning light found its way through the soft, gauzy curtains of the guest bedroom. Emma stirred, briefly disoriented by her unfamiliar surroundings. Then memory returned. The doctor's appointment, dinner with Mason, the promise that she could stay. Relief cascaded through her. Perhaps for the first time in months she'd slept on a bed that felt truly safe. Despite a slight ache in her lower back, she felt more rested than she had in a long while. Pushing aside the covers, she walked to the window. The sky was streaked with early sunlight, the city below already humming with life. She smiled faintly, recalling how precarious her situation had been just 2 days earlier. Now, here she stood in a quiet bubble of comfort, courtesy of a man she'd barely known but who had opened his home, and maybe his heart, to her. After a moment, she checked her phone, newly charged on the nightstand. No urgent messages. Her friend had replied late last night, relieved to hear she was all right, but offered no immediate invitation to come stay. Emma wondered if that door was closed for good. She tried not to feel hurt. People have their own battles, she reminded herself. She freshened up in the adjacent bathroom, thankful for the clean towels and toiletries. A gentle knock at the door startled her. "Yes?" she called, opening it slightly. Mason stood in the hallway, already dressed in a crisp shirt. No tie again, though. His expression was unreadable for a moment, then softened. "Good morning. I didn't want to barge in, just checking if you're awake." Emma offered a small smile. "I'm up. Did you sleep well?" "Reasonably," he said, though the faint circles under his eyes suggested otherwise. "I thought maybe we could have breakfast. I have a meeting at the office mid-morning, but I'd like to talk to you about a few things first." Her stomach twisted with a surge of nervousness. "Sure. Let me just finish here and I'll be right out." Mason nodded, stepping back. "Take your time, I'll be in the kitchen." When Emma emerged a few minutes later, she found him at the stove, wearing a focused expression as he scrambled eggs in a non-stick pan. He'd set the table in the nook near the window, where the penthouse's panoramic view provided a breathtaking morning backdrop. She approached, noticing how comfortable he looked in his own domain. "I didn't know you cooked," she teased softly. He shot a quick, modest grin over his shoulder. "It's basic stuff. I'm no gourmet chef, but I figured you might want something more than cereal." Emma smirked. "I appreciate the effort. It smells great." She took a seat, resting her hands on the table, feeling the baby shift gently inside. It was one of those moments that felt almost domestic, like a scene from a life she never expected. Mason joined her shortly with 2 plates of scrambled eggs and toast. He set them down, then poured glasses of fresh orange juice. "I also have some fruit. Not sure if you have any morning sickness or cravings?" She laughed quietly, shaking her head. "Those days of morning sickness are mostly behind me, but fruit would be nice. Thank you." He fetched a small bowl of diced melon and berries. As they began eating, an easy silence settled. The eggs were warm and comforting, and Emma savored every bite. At one point she caught Mason watching her intently, as though he was memorizing the simple act of her enjoying a meal. She raised an eyebrow in question, and he cleared his throat, focusing back on his own plate. When they finished, he sat back, fingers laced on the table. "So, I wanted to discuss what happens next," he began. "I'll be going into the office today, but only for a few hours. Are you comfortable staying here alone for a bit?" She blinked, feeling almost shy at how considerate he was. "Yes, of course. I'll be fine." Mason nodded. "Feel free to explore the apartment. If you need anything, you can call me or the doorman. After work, I'd like us to look at some more permanent options for you, like how to handle insurance, maybe look into job placements for when you're ready after the baby is born. Also, I was thinking about the baby's room. If you plan to stay here, we could convert one of the spare rooms into a nursery." His words hung in the air, full of quiet invitation. Emma's chest tightened. A nursery? The idea of it was so personal, so intimate. She wanted to let herself dream of fresh paint on the walls, a crib, soft blankets, and the security of a stable home. But was it wise to root herself in a place that might not be permanent? "That's very kind," she said cautiously. "But are you sure? I don't want to assume—" He leaned forward. "I'm not sure of anything," he admitted quietly. except that I want you to have a safe space for your child and for yourself. If that's here, I'm willing to make it work. But I also understand if you eventually want your own apartment." She exhaled, grateful, yet overwhelmed. "Let's take it one step at a time," she managed, meeting his gaze. "Maybe in a few days we can talk about how we want to set it up." Mason gave a nod, looking relieved. Agreed. Half an hour later, Mason was dressed in a tailored jacket, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Emma walked with him to the door, feeling an unexpected twinge of nerves at the thought of him leaving. She reminded herself that she was hardly a prisoner here. She just wasn't used to being in such a large, private space alone. He paused in the hallway as if wanting to say something, but ended up gently touching her arm. "I'll try not to be gone too long. If you need anything, call me." She offered him a reassuring smile. "I will. Have a good day at work." He hesitated a moment longer, then finally slipped out the door. She listened as his footsteps retreated to the elevator. After he was gone, the penthouse felt notably still, no subdued phone chatter or quiet footsteps echoing through the open spaces. Needing to occupy herself, Emma explored the rooms she hadn't yet seen in detail. One spare bedroom was indeed empty except for a few stacked boxes of old files. Another had exercise equipment, an elaborate treadmill, weights, and a small TV mounted on the wall. She lingered by the windows there, transfixed by the city below. Eventually, she meandered into Mason's office. The door was ajar, so she figured it was okay. The space was as immaculate as the rest of the penthouse. A broad desk with a sleek computer monitor, books and binders on meticulously arranged shelves, and on the wall, a framed blueprint of Carter Development's first major tower. She recognized the building from pictures in an architectural magazine, recalled how it was hailed for its innovative design. A small sense of pride for him bubbled up inside her. On the desk sat a neat array of sticky notes and a single photograph in a minimalistic frame, one of the few personal touches she'd noticed. Emma leaned in, seeing a younger Mason, perhaps fresh out of college, standing next to an older man who she guessed was his father. They both looked serious, but the father's hand was on Mason's shoulder, a gesture of approval. The sight tugged at Emma's heart. She wondered how losing both parents had shaped him. Was that why he'd grown up so guarded yet so protective of those he cared for? She returned to the living room, flipping on the TV for background noise. A news channel reported on the city's plans to fix storm damage. Emma listened half-heartedly, settling onto the sofa. The baby stirred again. She placed her hands over her belly, letting the new phone sit on the coffee table. A wave of emotion washed over her. Gratitude at being safe in the moment, but also anxiety about what the future might hold. Could she truly stay here indefinitely? She didn't want to become dependent. Yet the more she thought about leaving, the more a knot formed in her stomach. Where would she go? Back to couch hopping? Another rental she couldn't afford? She whispered a soft vow under her breath. "I'll find my footing soon, baby, I promise." As if to distract herself, Emma tapped the phone's screen, deciding it was time to handle a few practicalities. She needed to update friends about her phone number, see if there were any part-time remote teaching opportunities, or at least tutoring gigs. If she could earn something, maybe she could contribute to groceries or medical bills. She fired off a few emails, typed up a short note to a former colleague about any tutoring leads, then scanned some local job boards. Time slipped by more quickly than she realized. She heard a distant chime, the elevator, followed by the doorman's voice carrying through the intercom, announcing a delivery. Curious, she approached the door. When she opened it, a courier was stepping off the private elevator with a large box in hand. He offered a polite nod. "Delivery for Ms. Emma?" he said, checking the label. "That's me," she answered, puzzled. She signed where indicated, then took the box. It was fairly heavy, her arms straining a bit. Once she closed the door, she brought the package to the kitchen table and carefully opened it. Inside were a new maternity pillow, some prenatal vitamins, and a couple of books about childbirth and newborn care. Emma recognized a small typed note taped to one of the items. Just wanted to make sure you have what you need. M. She felt tears sting her eyes. Mason had only been gone a few hours, yet he'd already arranged for these thoughtful items to be delivered. It wasn't the cost that moved her. It was the gesture, the quiet demonstration that he was paying attention, wanting to ease her worries without making a show of it. She placed a hand over her mouth, letting a tear slide down her cheek. Without family or a partner, she'd grown used to handling everything alone. Now, she had someone who anticipated her needs. It humbled her, grateful and slightly afraid of how this might change her heart. She glanced around at the penthouse, trying to imagine how a nursery might look, how she might fill these echoing rooms with small signs of family life. That afternoon, she put the new pillow to use, testing how it felt behind her back as she lounged on the sofa. A contented sigh escaped her. The baby gave another series of flutters, and Emma murmured soothingly. She read from one of the new books, quietly learning about newborn schedules and feeding tips. It dawned on her that she might have to consider how Mason would fit into all of this. Would he want to be involved more deeply? Or was he simply offering kindness for a friend in need? She tried to quell her swirling thoughts, focusing on the present. For now, she would accept his generosity, do her best to keep moving forward and not overthink tomorrow. Hours passed in a blur of light reading and short walks around the penthouse to stretch her legs. Eventually, the sky shifted toward evening, and Emma found herself anticipating Mason's return. She realized she was actually looking forward to seeing him, sharing how her day went, hearing about his meeting, even telling him how much she appreciated the delivery. When a soft chime signaled the elevator around 6 o'clock, Emma sat up, heart skipping. She pushed aside the maternity pillow, smoothed her hair, and tried not to look overly eager. The door opened, and Mason stepped in, a slight smile breaking across his face when he spotted her. "Hey," he greeted, setting down his laptop bag. "Everything all right?" She rose from the sofa with care. "All good here. The package you sent arrived. Thank you so much." He nodded, looking somewhat relieved. "I was hoping it would get here before I returned. Are they helping?" "Definitely. The pillow's already making my back less sore." Her voice turned soft. "You didn't have to, you know, but it means a lot." Mason stepped closer, dropping his jacket over a chair. "I wanted to. I'm glad it helped." Their eyes locked for a moment, warm and earnest. Emma gestured at the table. "I was thinking, maybe I could cook dinner tonight. It's the least I can do." He hesitated. "Only if you feel up to it. Otherwise, I can order in again or—" She silenced him with a light laugh. "Let me at least try. It'll be simple. Pasta with vegetables? I found groceries in the fridge from your last delivery." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "That sounds wonderful." As Emma made her way to the kitchen, she felt a gentle flutter of excitement. She wasn't the world's greatest chef, but she wanted to do something that felt domestic, meaningful. She wanted to give back, and if the act of preparing a modest meal could show her gratitude, it was worth it. Mason lingered by the island, casually rolling up his shirt sleeves. "Need any help?" he asked, retrieving ingredients from the fridge. Emma handed him a cutting board. "You can chop the vegetables. Try not to cut a finger off in the process." A playful grin formed on his lips. "I'll do my best." In the background, the city's lights twinkled through the tall windows, casting a golden glow over them. As they began their impromptu cooking session, side by side, trading banter over cutting techniques and sauce seasoning, Emma felt an unfamiliar sense of closeness. Perhaps the storms in their pasts had led them here, forging an unexpected companionship. Whatever the future held for now, they had this shared moment in the warmth of the kitchen, ready to create something together. Gentle music played softly from Mason's phone, filling the kitchen's open expanse with a relaxing melody while Emma stirred the pasta sauce. On the stovetop, steam rose from a pot of boiling noodles, and on the cutting board beside her, fresh vegetables glistened under the lights. Mason, sleeves rolled to his forearms, finished rinsing the final batch of produce. From time to time, he and Emma exchanged quick smiles or laughter. Their occasional clumsiness in the kitchen seemed more charming than embarrassing. Though Mason had claimed to cook only the basics, he wielded the knife with surprising confidence, slicing mushrooms and zucchini into neat pieces. Emma, meanwhile, seasoned the sauce with just a hint of salt and pepper, sniffing to ensure she had the balance right. "Careful," Mason teased. "Too much salt and I might have to call the fire department." She smirked. "You're mixing metaphors. A fire department for salt overload?" He shrugged, still grinning. "I'm a business guy, not a culinary wordsmith." Their banter felt effortless, as though they'd known each other for far longer than a few days. In reality, every glimpse they shared still carried an undercurrent of newness. Emma hummed to the music, movements relaxed. She couldn't recall the last time she'd cooked in a space like this, bright, modern, and fully stocked with utensils that actually worked. A contented flutter in her chest reminded her how quickly her life had shifted. 1 week ago, the thought of a safe, warm evening preparing dinner was unimaginable. Yet here she was, breathing in the aroma of tomatoes and herbs, her pregnancy aches soothed by the pillow Mason had sent, her heart comforted by the kindness in his gaze. When the noodles were ready, she drained them carefully, Mason steadying the pot's handle to help. "All right," Emma said, exhaling with satisfaction. "Let's see if this is edible." He handed her a fork, curiosity bright in his eyes. She twirled some pasta drenched in sauce, blew on it to cool, and took a quick taste. A pleased grin spread across her face. "Not bad," she declared, "though it might need a pinch more salt." Mason chuckled. "You want me to grab the fire extinguisher or—" "Don't you start," she joked, giving him a playful nudge with her elbow. "Hand me the salt shaker instead." He did, and soon they were ladling the finished dish into 2 plates. The simplest pasta and vegetable sauce, yet it felt like a feast. Mason grabbed a bottle of sparkling water from the fridge. Together they moved to the dining nook by the window. City lights glowed beneath them, cars and street lamps stretching out in a sparkling grid. They settled into chairs, steam rising from the plates, the overhead pendant lamp casting a warm glow on their impromptu dinner. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply savored the first few bites. Emma was pleased that the sauce was flavorful yet not overwhelming, mild enough for her pregnancy-sensitive palate. Mason hummed approval, devouring the dish with enthusiasm. "This is wonderful," he said between bites. "I might hire you as my personal chef." Emma nearly choked on a laugh. "Oh, sure. My one signature pasta dish. I'd need to expand my repertoire if I were going to do this every day." He shook his head, serious despite the playful tone. "Sometimes it's the simple meals that mean the most. Thank you, Emma." She lowered her gaze, cheeks warming at the sincerity in his eyes. "You've done so much for me. I'm glad I could do something for you." They ate in comfortable silence after that, the easy companionship surrounding them like an invisible blanket. Now and then, Emma felt the baby give a light flutter, perhaps responding to the soothing music or the contentment filling her heart. She reached down to rub her belly, smiling softly to herself. When they finished, Mason insisted on clearing the plates. "You cooked. Let me do the cleanup," he said, carrying dishes to the sink. Emma offered a mild protest, but he stood firm. She leaned against the kitchen island, sipping her sparkling water. Watching him work, she tried to reconcile how a man so skilled in real estate development could also be so careful in small domestic tasks, washing dishes with steady hands, placing them neatly on a drying rack. It struck her that Mason probably never had to do such chores if he didn't want to. He could easily employ staff, yet there he was, doing it with quiet thoroughness. Before long, the kitchen was back in order. Mason dried his hands on a towel, then turned. "Feel like doing anything else tonight?" Or do you need to rest?" Emma considered. She was indeed a bit tired, but part of her didn't want the evening to end just yet. "Maybe we could watch a movie," she suggested, surprisingly shy. "I haven't had a chance to just sit and watch something in ages." He nodded, a spark of enthusiasm in his eyes. "That sounds nice. Let's pick something." They migrated to the living area, Mason flipping on the large TV. He navigated a streaming service, scrolling through new releases and classics. Emma sank into the sofa, propping the maternity pillow behind her for support. The baby shifted, and she exhaled a breath of relief at how the pillow relieved pressure on her lower back. "Any preferences?" Mason asked, glancing over at her. "Action, comedy, drama?" Emma pursed her lips. "Something light, maybe. A comedy. I could use a laugh." He grinned. "Comedy it is." He selected a well-reviewed romantic comedy, sweet and not too heavy, and joined her on the sofa. The overhead lights dimmed as he adjusted the system to movie mode, causing the room's ambiance to shift into a cozy, cinema-like glow. Despite the movie's opening scenes, quirky characters, and playful dialogue, Emma found herself more aware of the subtle closeness between her and Mason. They weren't exactly cuddled up, but as they leaned back, their arms occasionally brushed. Every so often she'd catch his profile out of the corner of her eye, illuminated by the TV's flickering light. About halfway through, a particularly silly scene made them both burst into laughter. Emma rested a hand on her stomach, feeling the baby twist in response to her amused movements. "Sorry, little one," she murmured with a chuckle. Mason's eyes flicked down, and for a moment he hesitated as though considering whether he could place a hand there too. Instead, he asked softly, "Do you need more water or anything?" She shook her head. "I'm good." Then she added with playful exasperation, "Though I might need a bathroom trip soon. Baby's pressing on my bladder." He nodded. "I'll pause the movie. You know where it is?" "Got it," she assured him, rising carefully. She patted down the hallway, grateful for the penthouse's spotlessly clean bathroom. These days she felt like she was peeing every hour. Part of pregnancy she'd grown resigned to. When Emma returned, she found Mason waiting patiently with the movie paused. He offered her a small smile as she settled back onto the sofa. Without overthinking, she scooted a bit closer, pressing the pillow between them so there was comfortable space for her belly. She noticed his quick intake of breath, but he made no move to shift away. "You sure you're comfortable?" he asked, almost too softly. She nodded, heartbeat fluttering. "Yeah, let's keep going." They continued watching, sharing another laugh when the comedic mishaps on screen reached a crescendo. Emma found herself relaxing completely, something she rarely experienced. The baby's movements slowed, and she sensed that her little one was content too. Toward the end of the film, as the main characters resolved their misunderstanding in a dramatic, comedic fashion, Emma realized she was leaning against Mason's shoulder. She hadn't meant to. She'd simply felt tired, and the weight of the day's events, along with the growing child inside her, made her subconsciously seek support. His arm was there, warm and steady, so she let herself rest against him. At first, she tensed, ready to straighten up and apologize, but he didn't seem to mind. If anything, he adjusted slightly, giving her more room to lean comfortably. The faint smell of his cologne filled her senses, a comforting, grounding scent. By the time the credits rolled, Emma felt drowsy. The combination of a full meal, soft lighting, and the gentle weight of companionship lulled her. She blinked, trying to stay awake as the final scene faded out. Mason lifted the remote, turning the TV off. Then he looked down at Emma, pressed against his shoulder. "Hey," he murmured, his voice so quiet she almost thought she'd dreamt it. "You okay?" She forced her eyes open. "Sorry," she mumbled, sitting up straight. "I didn't mean to." "No, it's fine," he assured her gently. "If you're tired, you should head to bed. I don't want you to push yourself." She yawned, covering her mouth. "Yeah, I guess I am tired. I had a nice time tonight, though." "Thank you." His gaze lingered, a soft light in his eyes. "Me too," he said. Then, as though remembering to keep a respectful distance, he rose from the sofa, offering her a hand. She took it, pulling herself upright. They walked to the hallway side by side. At the door to the guest room, Emma paused, turning to him. She could feel the subtle tension of unasked questions about the future, about where this connection was heading, but neither of them spoke it aloud. The moment felt too delicate, too new. "Good night, Mason," she whispered, offering a small, sincere smile. He rested his hand lightly on the doorframe. "Good night, Emma. Sleep well." She slipped inside the room, heart fluttering. Only when she was alone did she exhale, one hand absently rubbing her stomach. The guest room's soft lamp illuminated the bed, reminding her how lucky she was not to be facing another unpredictable, uncomfortable night somewhere else. Changing into a simple t-shirt, Emma slid under the covers, the quiet hum of the penthouse enveloping her. For a long while she stared at the ceiling, thoughts dancing around Mason's kindness, the baby's impending arrival, and the persistent warmth in her chest whenever she recalled leaning against him during the movie. Eventually, her eyelids grew heavy. She drifted into a dreamless sleep, lulled by the sense that, in this high-rise sanctuary, she had found not just shelter, but the beginnings of true comfort and care. A light patter of rain, nothing like the storm that brought them together, tapped against the penthouse windows in the early dawn. Emma stirred, shifting under the covers until she found a comfortable angle for her growing belly. Sleep had come easily after the cozy night of shared laughter and a movie with Mason, but now she found herself wide awake, her mind roaming over the events of the past week. She'd stayed longer than she had ever intended, but so far, no one seemed to mind. In fact, Mason's quiet actions signaled the opposite. He wanted her there. Still, she couldn't help wondering if it was fair to rely on his generosity. Did she dare hope for a more permanent place in his world? Pushing away the swirl of doubts, she carefully rose from the bed. The new maternity pillow had made a real difference. Her back felt less stiff than usual. She stretched briefly, then headed to the bathroom to get ready for the day. The reflection that met her in the mirror showed a woman who looked more rested than she had in ages, although her eyes still held that cautious flicker of uncertainty. She pressed a hand over her belly as if silently assuring her baby, "We're okay. We really might be okay." When Emma stepped out of the guest room, the penthouse was awash in a gentle morning glow, enhanced by the hushed, rainy drizzle outside. She found Mason at the dining table, nursing a mug of coffee while scanning through emails on a tablet. He looked more casual than usual. No suit jacket, just a neatly pressed shirt with the top button open. The occasional droplet of water slid down the window behind him, a soft background to the quiet space. "Morning," she said, approaching. "You're up early." Mason glanced up, setting aside the tablet. A subtle warmth rose in his expression. "Morning. I'm trying to clear some work before heading in. Didn't want to disturb you." He paused, eyeing her carefully. "How'd you sleep?" Emma offered a reassuring smile. "Better than ever. That pillow is magic." He returned her smile. "Good, I'm glad." Then he gestured toward the kitchen. "There's fresh coffee if you want some, or I can make tea if you'd prefer." "Coffee sounds good," she replied. "Just a small cup, though. Doctor said to watch my caffeine." Mason rose, moving to the kitchen counter. As he prepared a second mug, Emma lowered herself into a chair, feeling the baby shift. She looked at Mason's half-eaten breakfast, scrambled egg whites, a slice of toast. Something about the simplicity of the scene, the two of them starting the day side by side, felt normal, almost like a routine. He returned a moment later, placing the mug before her. She inhaled the comforting aroma. "Thank you," she said, cupping the warm ceramic in her hands. He nodded, returning to his seat. "Any plans today?" he asked casually, as though they'd been discussing schedules for months. Emma shrugged, taking a careful sip. I was thinking of searching more job listings, maybe checking if my old school has any openings for next semester. I'd love to teach again at some point, but I know that might be tough with the baby on the way. Mason's expression turned thoughtful. That's a good idea, and, I actually wanted to mention something. My firm runs a philanthropic initiative, Carter Community Foundation, where we sometimes fund local educational projects. We also offer tutoring programs for employees' kids. I'm not sure how you'd feel about it, but there might be a part-time opportunity there if you're interested in tutoring or creating lesson plans. Her eyes widened slightly. Really? I didn't know you did that. I'd definitely be interested, but I don't want any special favors. He held up a hand in a gentle stop. It's not charity. It's a need we genuinely have. Of course, the foundation's director would have to approve, but I can introduce you. I think your background in teaching might be exactly what they're looking for. A spark of hope lit in her chest. She'd missed the classroom, missed helping kids discover new worlds through reading or math. Thank you, she said, hushed. I'd love the chance to speak with them. Mason nodded, lips curving in a relieved smile. Great. Let me see if I can arrange an informal chat or interview soon. For now, just keep an open mind. Emma's heart fluttered, a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She hadn't expected an employment lead so soon. Then again, everything else about this week had been a whirlwind of unexpected fortunes. She took another sip of coffee, letting the warmth settle her nerves. I appreciate it, really. They finished breakfast with easy conversation about the day's weather, the small errands Emma wanted to run. Mason soon checked the time, standing up to gather his tablet and a light blazer. I should get going, he said, sounding vaguely regretful. I have a site inspection across town, then I'll head to the office. I might be back a bit later than usual. You'll be all right here? Emma braced a hand on the table, pushing herself up. Yes, of course, don't worry about me. Do what you need to do. Mason hovered, as if wanting to linger. Then he pivoted toward the door. You can always call me or Mark, my driver, if you need help getting around. She nodded, following him to the entryway. I'll be fine. Good luck with your meetings. He paused, expression earnest. Thanks. I'll text you if I can arrange that chat with the foundation director. Until then, feel free to keep exploring. Use anything you like here. She thanked him again. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Emma alone to the subdued hush of the penthouse. Outside the windows, the gentle rain continued, veiling the city in a misty curtain. Emma tried to be productive that morning. She scanned more job boards, composed a few inquiry emails, and browsed teaching resource websites to keep her knowledge fresh. She felt a sense of purpose returning, a lightness in her spirit that she hadn't known in months. The baby kicked occasionally as though offering encouragement. Later, she wandered into the penthouse's exercise room, curious about the view from there. The large windows revealed a panorama of the city's skyscrapers under a gray, drizzly sky. She watched tiny cars crawling far below. The treadmill sat invitingly, but she decided a gentle walk around the apartment might be enough. Doctor's orders had her cautious about overexerting herself. At midday, she prepared a simple salad for lunch, feeling a small pang that Mason wasn't around to share the meal. Strange how quickly she'd grown used to his company. A wave of guilt struck her. She hoped she wasn't burdening him emotionally, needing so much of his time. She pushed the thought away, reminding herself they were both adults. He'd invited her into his life with open eyes. After lunch, she tidied the kitchen, then decided to rest for a bit. Settling on the living room sofa, she drew the plush throw blanket over her lap. The steady patter of rain lulled her, and before she knew it, she dozed off. A gentle vibration from her phone woke her. Emma stirred, blinking away the vestiges of sleep. The sky outside was darker now, early evening creeping in. She checked the caller ID. Mason. Hello? She answered, voice still thick with drowsiness. "Emma, hi?" came his deep, warm tone through the line. "Did I catch you at a bad time?" She shifted upright, tugging the blanket aside. "No, I just took a nap. Everything okay?" "Yes," he assured her. "I just wrapped up the inspection and I'm about to head back to the office. I spoke with the foundation director, Linda. She'd love to meet you if you're up for a quick visit tomorrow afternoon." Emma felt a jolt of excitement. "That sounds great. I'd love to meet her." "Good." He seemed relieved. "I'll have my driver swing by around noon tomorrow. He'll bring you to the office so we can introduce you. Is that all right?" A smile lit her face. "That's perfect. Thank you." "Excellent. I won't be home until late tonight. There's a dinner with some investors. But please don't wait up. Order yourself dinner or cook, whichever you prefer." Her stomach twisted slightly, missing his presence. "All right, I will. Good luck at your dinner." "Thanks, Emma," he said quietly. "I'll see you tonight or tomorrow at the latest." They hung up. Emma stared at her phone, heart thrumming with equal parts anticipation and nerves. Tomorrow, she'd step into Mason's world more formally, meeting people he worked with every day. A surge of determination rose within her. She wanted to prove herself capable, not just a pity case. The evening stretched on, the penthouse awash in the city's night glow. Emma made a simple dinner for one, a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup, comforting and quick. She tried to read one of the baby care books Mason had given her, but found her thoughts drifting too often to him. She wondered what kind of dinner he attended. Some swanky restaurant or corporate event room, no doubt. Was he bored or thriving amid business talk? Feeling restless, she tidied up random items around the living room, then decided to pick out clothes for tomorrow's meeting. Though she didn't have a large wardrobe, Mason's earlier shopping provision had included a comfortable yet stylish maternity dress in a soft navy blue. She slipped it on to test the fit. It hugged her bump, but not too tightly, and looked polished enough for a professional setting. Standing before the mirror, Emma angled herself to see the side profile. Her belly was definitely prominent now. There was no hiding that she was well into the third trimester. A flicker of self-consciousness tugged at her. Would the foundation director judge her for being pregnant? Then again, she thought, if they specialized in community support, maybe they valued inclusivity. She returned to the living room, mind whirling with tomorrow's possibilities. Glancing at the clock, she realized it was already nearing 9 p.m. and Mason still wasn't back. Usually he'd text if he was running much later, so perhaps the dinner was simply longer than expected. Deciding on a quick shower, Emma retreated to her room. Warm water soothed her aches, and she let it wash away her worries about the interview. She toweled off and slipped into a loose t-shirt, ready to wind down. The baby's kicks subsided somewhat, as if also preparing for rest. At around 10:30, she returned to the living room, flipping on a lamp. A pang of hunger nudged her. Pregnancy often demanded second dinner. She rummaged in the kitchen, opting for a small bowl of cereal. While she ate, the penthouse remained hushed. Part of her wished she'd see Mason's familiar silhouette at the door, but the minutes ticked by without any sign. Finally, around 11 p.m., the elevator chime sounded. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She stood, smoothing her t-shirt, trying not to look like she'd been hovering anxiously. Moments later, the door opened, revealing Mason. He carried his laptop bag and wore a subdued expression. The crisp lines of his shirt seemed slightly ruffled, as if the night had worn on him. "Hey," Emma greeted softly. "Long day?" He let out a sigh, setting his bag down by a chair. "Yeah, long but productive. Investors wanted every detail imaginable. Sorry I'm late." She stepped closer, noticing a hint of fatigue in his eyes. "It's fine. I was just about to head to bed. Did you eat?" He nodded. "We had dinner, but I didn't have much appetite." He paused, scanning her face with genuine warmth. "How was your evening?" "Quiet," she replied with a small laugh. "And a little dull without you. I just read, ate a simple dinner. The usual." His eyes flickered. "I'm glad you're comfortable here. Sorry again about leaving you alone." "Stop apologizing," she interrupted gently. "You have a life, a job, and responsibilities. I'm grateful for all you've already done." Mason exhaled, something like relief crossing his features. "Right. Well, tomorrow we'll see each other at the office for your meeting with Linda. I think you'll like her. She's brilliant, a former teacher herself." He checked his watch, wincing at the late hour. "I should let you rest. We both have a busy day tomorrow." Emma lingered, the closeness in the room unexpectedly soothing. Despite his fatigue, Mason's presence brought a comforting energy, reminding her of how secure she felt under his roof. "All right," she murmured. "I'll head to bed then. Good night, Mason." His gaze lingered on her, warm yet restrained. "Good night, Emma." She offered a faint smile and turned toward the hallway. Before stepping out of view, she glanced back to see him crossing the living room, removing his cufflinks with a tired slump of his shoulders. In that moment, he looked more like a man carrying invisible burdens than a high-powered CEO. As she entered the guest room, a swirl of emotions settled over Emma: concern for Mason's tiredness, excitement for the upcoming meeting, gratitude for how far she'd come from that stormy night of desperation. Resting a hand on her belly, she whispered a silent promise to her baby. "We're making strides, and tomorrow is one more step." She slipped under the blankets, the penthouse's soft lamplight casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the rain had slowed to a gentle patter, soothing her nerves. Slowly, her thoughts grew hazy, drifting toward dreams of a life where she and her child wouldn't just survive, they might actually thrive. And in those dreams, a man with quiet strength and unwavering kindness stood beside them, a reassuring figure in the background, ready to guide them toward a future she'd never dared envision before. Morning arrived with surprising swiftness, the faint glow of sunrise cutting through the rain's residue on the windows. Emma dressed carefully in her soft, navy maternity dress, making sure to smooth the fabric over her belly. She still felt a flutter of nerves about meeting Linda, the Carter Community Foundation director. Would they see her as a capable professional, or just a pregnant woman seeking handouts? She forced herself to take a deep breath. Mason had been clear. This was a genuine opportunity, not a pity offer. She needed to trust that. She slipped on low-heeled shoes, checked her hair in the mirror, and gave a final glance at her reflection. A small, encouraging nod at herself, and then she stepped into the hallway. Mason had left a note on the dining table. In tidy handwriting it read, "Emma, had an early meeting. Mark will pick you up at noon for the foundation visit. Good luck." She smiled, warmed by his thoughtfulness. Next to the note was a small box of pastries and a container of orange juice. A wave of gratitude passed through her. She recognized a pattern emerging. He often arranged little details to ensure she had what she needed. Even when he was absent, his presence lingered. Emma ate a couple of pastries and sipped juice, then fiddled with her phone for a while. It was only 9 a.m., so she had a few hours to collect her thoughts. She double-checked the documents she'd prepared, a simple resume highlighting her teaching experience, plus references from her old school. She hoped that would be enough for a preliminary conversation with Linda. The morning slipped by peacefully. She read a few more chapters of a pregnancy book, straightened the living room cushions, and then decided to rest her feet until Mark arrived. Her mind buzzed with a mix of anticipation and excitement. The baby wiggled, as though sensing her mood. Right before noon, a notification from the doorman popped up on the penthouse's wall panel. Mark had arrived. Emma, heart fluttering, collected her bag and headed down via the private elevator. In the lobby, the doorman offered a polite nod before opening the door to reveal Mark waiting by a sleek black sedan. "Good afternoon, Ms. Emma," Mark greeted with a friendly smile. "Shall we head to Mr. Carter's office?" Emma returned the smile. "Yes, please. Thank you, Mark." The drive through the city felt shorter than expected. Emma gazed at the passing streets, Gray clouds still hovered overhead, though the rain had paused. Buildings rose in a blend of old and new, a testament to constant urban evolution. After some turns and stops, they arrived at a tall glass tower bearing the discreet but elegant sign, Carter Developments. Mark pulled up to the main entrance and circled around to open Emma's door. She steadied herself, nerves prickling once more. The lobby inside was spacious and modern, with polished floors, pristine lighting, and a reception desk that exuded quiet efficiency. Employees, many in tailored suits, moved with focused purpose. She wondered if they recognized her as someone special to Mason, or if she was just another visitor. A poised receptionist smiled. "Hello, how may I help you?" "Hi, I'm Emma. I have an appointment with Linda from the Carter Community Foundation. Mason, Mr. Carter, arranged it." The receptionist nodded professionally. "Yes, Ms. Emma, we've been expecting you. Let me notify Linda. Please wait here a moment." Emma barely had time to glance around before Linda herself appeared, a tall woman with cropped gray hair and a warm, confident stride. She extended a hand in greeting. "Emma, I'm Linda Brooks. It's so nice to meet you in person. Mason's told me a bit about your teaching background." Emma shook her hand, relieved by the director's kind demeanor. "It's great to meet you too. Thank you for taking the time." Linda guided her into a side elevator that required a keycard swipe, heading up several floors. "We have our foundation offices on the 14th floor. Just a few rooms, but we do a lot of outreach from there. Mason said you might be interested in part-time tutoring or some curriculum planning." Emma exhaled, gratitude mixing with a surge of determination. "Yes, that's right. I taught elementary school before budget cuts cost me my position. I love working with kids, especially helping them in reading and math." Linda smiled. "That's precisely what we need. The foundation supports an after-school program for Carter Development's employees. Many have demanding schedules, and their kids benefit from extra academic support. We also sponsor a few local community centers. We're always seeking experienced educators to design short lesson plans, coordinate volunteer tutors, that sort of thing." They stepped into a bright hallway lined with photos of children engaged in art and science activities, smiling faces that reflected Linda's words. Emma's heart lifted. This was the kind of environment she'd missed, a place dedicated to growth, learning, and community support. She followed Linda into a cozy office where a round table and chairs waited. "Sit," Linda invited, gesturing politely. They settled, and Linda flipped open a folder on the table. "Why don't you tell me more about your experience, your teaching style, your goals?" Emma launched into a brief but earnest overview. She'd specialized in early childhood education, focusing on hands-on, creative approaches to reading and math. She explained how she adapted lessons for varied learning paces and cultural backgrounds. Her passion was evident even to her own ears. She realized she missed this part of herself, the teacher who thrived on guiding children toward understanding. Linda listened intently, occasionally jotting notes or nodding. "It sounds like you have exactly the kind of perspective we value," she said when Emma finished. "Our biggest need is for a coordinator who can manage and develop lesson resources for both the employees' children and a local community center we sponsor. It'd start at about 20 hours a week. Flexible scheduling. Is that feasible for you?" Emma's eyes widened at the directness of the offer. "That sounds amazing. I would be thrilled. My only concern is that I'm in my last trimester, so there may be times I need doctor appointments or rest. After the baby's born, I'd also need some maternity time." Linda nodded with understanding. "Of course, we're flexible. We believe in supporting our staff's well-being. If you need remote hours or adjustments, we can accommodate. Our priority is the kids getting quality materials and guidance, not micromanaging clock-ins." She hesitated, brow furrowing gently. "Though, I won't lie. Knowing you're Mr. Carter's friend, I want to ensure you understand this is strictly professional. No one's expecting you to do anything you're uncomfortable with. We're simply excited about your qualifications." Emma's shoulders relaxed. "I appreciate that. I just want to contribute honestly. I hope it's clear I'm not looking for special treatment." "It's clear," Linda confirmed, smiling warmly. "In fact, your passion is exactly what we need." They spent the next half hour going over potential projects and discussing Emma's availability. Linda explained she'd start on a trial basis, 2 or 3 days per week, helping organize a summer reading program. If all went well, Emma could transition into a more formal role once the baby was older. By the time they concluded, Emma's nerves had transformed into exhilaration. She felt the old spark of purpose reignite. As they exited the foundation offices, Linda walked her to the elevator. "I'll finalize some documents and have them emailed to you. We can aim for an official start next week if that works." Emma almost wanted to hug the woman. "That would be perfect. Thank you so much, Linda." Linda's eyes sparkled with genuine warmth. "I'm the one thanking you, Emma. Welcome aboard." After Linda departed, Emma stood in the hallway, clutching the folder of notes Linda had given her. Her heart was buoyant. She'd found a real opportunity, an actual job. Even if part-time, it was a lifeline back to the career she loved and a glimpse of independence once she figured out childcare and scheduling. She inhaled deeply, eyes stinging with happy tears. She headed back toward the main reception area, intending to text Mark for a ride. As she passed a wall of glass partitions, she spotted Mason in a side room, a conference space with a long table where several business people sat. He glanced up mid-discussion, eyes catching hers through the glass. His expression flashed from focus to warm surprise. He made a small gesture for her to wait, then turned back to the others, murmuring something quietly. Within moments, he excused himself and stepped out into the corridor. "Emma," he greeted, voice subdued but tinged with excitement. "Finished already?" She nodded, suppressing a huge grin. "Linda practically hired me on the spot. Part-time coordinator for lesson plans and tutoring. It's amazing." Mason's features lit up with genuine delight, tension easing from his stance. "That's fantastic. I'm so happy for you. Did you like Linda?" "She's wonderful. Kind, professional, and passionate about education." He chuckled. "She's definitely that. I'm glad it worked out. Did you want me to walk you out, or do you have time to chat?" Emma quickly glanced at the conference room behind him. Through the glass, she saw the other attendees waiting, leafing through documents. "You look busy. I can spare a few minutes," he assured her softly. "Come on." He guided her a short distance away to a quieter corner near large windows overlooking the city. "So, you'll be staying here, in the city for now?" he asked, arms folding casually. Emma placed a hand over her belly, feeling a little flurry of movement. "Yes, definitely, especially with this job. It's flexible, which is perfect. I'll need to figure out the details, like how I'll manage after the baby's born. But I'm excited, Mason." Her eyes flickered with emotion. "Thank you. I'd never have found this without you." He shook his head. "You would have found a great job somewhere eventually. You're talented, Emma. All I did was open a door." Her lips curved. "Sometimes that's all someone needs." They shared a moment of content silence, the hum of office activity around them. Emma studied his face, the relief, the pride. She wanted to show him how grateful she was. Before she could overthink it, she stepped forward, leaning in to press a light, tentative kiss on his cheek. The gesture was gentle, lasting only a second. He stilled, eyes widening. When she pulled back, her cheeks warmed, but she held his gaze. "That's for everything," she murmured, voice trembling slightly. Mason exhaled, almost as if he'd been holding his breath. A faint flush touched his own cheeks. "You're welcome," he said quietly, clearing his throat. He opened his mouth to add something, but footsteps approached. One of his associates peeked out of the conference room, looking apologetic. "Mr. Carter, we need you for a quick review of the contract clauses." Mason blinked, turning briefly. "Right, I'll be right there." He glanced back at Emma, eyes full of unspoken thoughts. "I'm sorry, I have to finish this meeting." "Of course," she said, stepping back with a small, understanding smile. "I'll just find Mark and head home." He nodded. Then, with a subtle hesitation, he reached out to give her hand a brief squeeze. "We'll talk at home later. I want to hear all the details." Her chest fluttered. "I'll be waiting." As he disappeared into the conference room, she inhaled sharply, surprised by her own boldness. She gently brushed her cheek where her lips had touched his. The contact, though brief, had sparked something deeper, something that had been brewing between them from day one. She hoped he felt it too. Emma strolled back to reception, texting Mark that she was ready. The elevator ride down felt dreamlike. She replayed the entire morning in her head. Linda's offer, Mason's supportive words, the impulsive kiss on his cheek. Everything felt charged with possibility, as though her world had tilted toward a brighter axis. Mark pulled the car around, and she climbed in, offering him a cheerful "thank you." During the ride, her phone chimed with a message from Linda. "So happy you're on board. We'll send forms soon. Welcome to the foundation team." Emma hugged the phone to her chest, heart swelling. This was real. She had a job, a supportive environment, and a place to call home, for now, at least. And she had Mason, whose quiet generosity and growing affection lit up corners of her life she'd long thought would stay dark. She reached the penthouse, nodding a polite goodbye to Mark. The doorman greeted her with a respectful nod as she stepped into the lobby. Moments later, she was gliding up the private elevator, practically buzzing with excitement. Inside the penthouse, the rooms felt welcoming and familiar. She set her folder on the table, scanning the open space, remembering the first time she'd seen it, how intimidating it had seemed. Not anymore. Now it just felt like home. Emma exhaled, hand drifting to her stomach as the baby rolled. She stroked gently. "We did it, little one," she whispered with a smile. "We're getting back on our feet." The swirl of relief, anticipation, and something that felt dangerously close to happiness nearly overwhelmed her. She allowed herself a moment to bask in it, ignoring the little voice that warned her not to get too comfortable, not to risk heartbreak. Eventually, she changed into more comfortable pants and curled up on the sofa, rummaging for her phone. She wanted to text Mason a quick thank you, but paused. Would it be distracting for him? He was still in that meeting. Instead, she typed a short message. "Emma, just got home. Thank you again for introducing me to Linda. This means so much. Talk to you tonight?" She hesitated, thumb hovering, then pressed send. Within minutes, her phone buzzed. "Mason, so proud of you. Home in a few hours. We'll celebrate." Reading the text, Emma's grin widened. Celebrate. She allowed herself a little thrill at the thought of an evening spent sharing her good news, maybe cooking together or simply savoring each other's company. Glancing around the penthouse, she considered the possibility of a long-term stay. Perhaps, if her job solidified and she saved enough, she could eventually rent her own place. But a pang of reluctance twinged her at the thought of leaving. The baby's first months. Did she dare envision them here in a nursery they might decorate together? "Don't get ahead of yourself," she murmured, shaking her head with a wry smile. But it was too late. The spark of a future, a real family life, kept glowing in her mind. Part of her couldn't help wanting that more than anything, a stable home for her child, and maybe, just maybe, a partner who cared for both of them. She turned her attention to a fresh email from Linda, already detailing potential lesson plans. Eager to prove herself, Emma began drafting ideas on her laptop. Hours passed in a productive blur, the baby occasionally nudging as if to remind her to pause and eat. Eventually, the late afternoon sun dipped low, painting the penthouse with golden light. Soon, Mason would return. Emma's heart skipped at the thought of telling him all she'd brainstormed and maybe continuing that unfinished conversation, one that might lead to them forging a real bond beyond mere assistance. For once, the future wasn't a scary void. It was a horizon she was ready to approach, step by cautious step, with hope lighting her way. Clouds shifted across the sky as evening fell, painting the penthouse windows with a soft amber glow. Emma had lost track of time drafting lesson ideas for the foundation. She'd jotted down strategies for individualized reading sessions, fun math games, and how to incorporate simple science experiments. The ideas flowed so freely that she nearly forgot to check the clock. A soft chime from the private elevator pulled her from her work. Heart fluttering, she set aside her notes and rose from the sofa. Moments later, Mason stepped inside, carrying a paper bag that exuded tantalizing aromas. His tie was loosened, and a subdued weariness clung to him, though it lightened at the sight of her. "Hey," he said, offering a gentle smile. "I brought dinner. Thought we could celebrate with something nice. There's a small bistro downtown that does wonderful grilled chicken and pasta dishes." Emma approached, her own excitement flaring. "That sounds perfect. Let me help." She reached for the bag, and as their hands brushed, a subtle spark passed between them. He let go, allowing her to peek inside at the neatly packaged meals. "I saw your text," he continued, shedding his suit jacket. "Glad you got home okay. I've been looking forward to hearing everything about the foundation meeting." She beamed, gesturing for him to follow her to the kitchen island. "Linda was incredible. She gave me more details about the after-school program. They're letting me do part-time hours and I can start next week." Mason's eyes shone with genuine pride. "That's wonderful, Emma. You must be thrilled." "I am," she admitted, hands trembling slightly with excitement as she laid out the takeout containers. "I've already started brainstorming lesson plans. They're going to email me all the official paperwork tomorrow. I can't wait to get started." He nodded, loosening his tie fully and placing it on a nearby chair. "You deserve this. You're great at what you do, and the foundation's lucky to have you." They set the table at the dining nook, unpacking containers of grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, and a savory pasta in cream sauce. Emma noticed Mason had also brought a small box of pastries, mini eclairs, and fruit tarts. Her stomach growled in anticipation. Once they sat, she smoothed the napkin on her lap. "Thank you for thinking of me," she said, voice soft. "Not just with the job introduction, but with dinner, everything." He gave a slight shrug, meeting her gaze. "You've brought a lot of life into this place. It's the least I can do." That comment stirred a warmth in her chest. She remembered how empty and cold the penthouse had felt to her when she first arrived, like a showroom without soul. Now the table was set with 2 plates, a homey sense of shared purpose. They began eating, each bite layered with satisfaction, both from the food and from the quiet knowledge that they were no longer strangers. Between mouthfuls, Emma described her conversation with Linda, how the trial schedule might work, and her plans to incorporate fun, hands-on learning activities for the kids. Mason listened intently, occasionally asking thoughtful questions. Despite his business acumen, he seemed genuinely engaged in her ideas about education. After dinner, Emma cleared the plates while Mason put the leftover pastries on a small platter. He waved her over to the living room where he set the platter on the coffee table. The city lights twinkled outside, providing a romantic backdrop to their casual evening. "Dessert?" he asked, picking up an eclair and offering it to her. Emma laughed, taking it with a thankful nod. "Don't mind if I do," she teased, biting into the pastry. It was creamy and sweet, and she savored it slowly. Mason took a seat beside her on the sofa, maintaining a respectful distance but still close enough that Emma felt his presence. A comfortable silence settled as they each finished their dessert. She noticed the way he snuck occasional glances at her, appraising, yet gentle. When the treats were gone, Mason brushed his hands together. "So," he began softly, "with the job starting next week, how are you feeling about everything else, like the baby's timeline, your doctor visits?" Emma tucked a leg beneath her, resting a hand on her belly. "It's a lot to juggle, but I'm determined to make it work. I'll arrange checkups around the foundation schedule, and if I need any extra rest, Linda already said they're flexible." He nodded, concern flickering in his eyes. "And About staying here? The offer still stands, you know. I don't want you to worry about rushing off, especially if you're settling into a new job, and until the baby arrives, I'd feel better if you were in a safe, stable place. She lowered her gaze, a warm flush creeping up her neck. I do feel safe here, she admitted softly. I was thinking maybe I could pay some rent once I start earning. I don't want to just freeload. His brows furrowed slightly. Emma, please don't worry about that. You're not freeloading, you're doing what you need to survive and grow. But if it makes you more comfortable, we can figure something out. Whatever works for you. The sincerity in his voice touched her. She nodded, heart fluttering. Thank you, she said, looking up to meet his gaze. Really, Mason? He gave a small, rueful smile as though he too grappled with how effortlessly they'd adapted to each other's presence. Sometimes I can't believe it's only been about a week since I found you in that storm. Feels like longer, she finished for him, understanding exactly what he meant. They sat quietly, the ambient city noise filtering through the windows. The baby kicked, and Emma shifted, pressing a hand to her side with a soft laugh. Someone's awake, she murmured. Mason's eyes fell to her stomach. Active again, huh? Yes. She hesitated, then gently took his hand, guiding it to the spot where the baby moved. He didn't resist, but he seemed momentarily breathless, both at the contact and at the reminder of her growing child. A firm little thump echoed under his palm. His eyes widened in wonder, a quiet awe settling over his features. Wow, he breathed, voice low. That's incredible. Emma felt her throat tighten. Sharing these moments with him felt so intimate, more than any dinner or conversation. She recalled how he first felt the baby's kicks days ago, but now they were on a sofa, hearts inches apart, forging a bond that almost felt like family. The thought sent a tender ache through her chest. She removed her hand, letting him keep his there if he wished. He did for another few seconds until the baby's movements calmed. Then he slowly withdrew, exhaling softly. Thank you for letting me be part of that, he whispered. It's all still pretty new to me. Emma smiled, eyes moist. Me too. It's just the two of us. Well, three of us now, she teased, her voice trembling with emotion. I was so afraid before, thinking I'd face all of this alone. A heavy silence followed, laced with unspoken admissions. He swallowed, gaze locked on her. Emma, He paused, gathering thoughts. I know you're strong and capable on your own. But for what it's worth, I'm here. I want to help, not because I pity you, but because I care. Her pulse thundered in her ears. I know, she whispered, placing her hand over his where it rested on his thigh. And I appreciate it more than I can say. You've shown me so much kindness. The look in his eyes shifted, deepening from gentle concern to something more intense, tinged with warmth. Slowly, almost hesitantly, he shifted closer, his free hand hovering near her cheek as if awaiting permission. Emma's heart skittered. She dipped her head in a subtle nod, granting it. He cupped her cheek gently. The heat of his touch seared through her, and her breath caught. Their faces were close enough for her to see the faint lines of weariness and worry around his eyes that glowed with earnest affection. She closed her own, leaning into the sensation, letting all the day's happiness, gratitude, and tentative longing meld into one dizzying moment. His lips brushed hers, feather-light at first, an unspoken question of whether she was okay with it. She answered by leaning in further, meeting his tentative kiss with soft acceptance. The fleeting pressure of his mouth against hers fluttered her senses, the baby's gentle shifts adding an extra layer of emotion she'd never felt before. When they broke apart, he lingered just inches away, his forehead nearly touching hers. Emma's eyes fluttered open, catching the flicker of vulnerability in his. She offered a tremulous smile, heart pounding in a mix of wonder and relief. He spoke first, voice husky with emotion. "I'm sorry if that was too—" She shook her head, pressing a fingertip to his lips to silence him. "No, it was good, really good." He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. I've been fighting this, not wanting to push you or complicate things. But Emma, I can't deny how I feel, how I'm starting to care about you, both of you," he added, dropping his gaze to her belly. Tears prickled at her eyes, a happy ache blooming in her chest. "You're not complicating anything," she whispered, letting her hand rest over his again. "I feel it too. I've felt it for a while." Their eyes locked, a silent exchange of trust. Mason leaned in once more, capturing her lips in a deeper, more certain kiss. His hand tangled gently in her hair, cautious of her comfort. She surrendered to the warmth and sweetness, realizing that maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself this happiness, this closeness to a man who had shown her nothing but respect and tenderness. After a moment, they parted again, breathless. Emma's face glowed, cheeks warm. "We should, probably talk about this," she managed, a shy laugh escaping her. Mason let out a quiet chuckle, his forehead still near hers. "Yes, we should. Because I want to make sure this is real, that we're not rushing." She nodded, bracing one hand on the sofa to steady herself. "It's been only a week since that storm, but I feel like so much has changed," she admitted. "I'm not naive enough to think life is suddenly perfect, but I've never felt so supported." He stroked her cheek with his thumb. "I know, I feel it too. If we take it slowly, carefully, figure out how to blend our lives, I think we can make it work, if that's what you want." Emma's eyes flicked to his, wet with held-back tears. "Yes, I want that," she whispered. "One step at a time, but yes." A tender silence wrapped them in its embrace. Outside, the city's lights shimmered in the glass reflection, and somewhere in the apartment, the clock ticked, marking the official start of a deeper bond. They both knew challenges lay ahead: her final months of pregnancy, his demanding career, the complexities of forging a relationship so quickly. But sitting there, hands entwined, lips still tingling from that first shared kiss, they felt an undeniable sense of hope. Finally, Mason gently shifted, easing them both upright. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Let's do something simple," he said, voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "Maybe watch a movie, or just talk about what this means for us." Emma nodded eagerly, a tearful laugh escaping. "Yes, let's figure it out. Together." Hand in hand, they rose from the sofa, leaving the empty dessert plates on the coffee table. The penthouse lights glowed warmly, reflecting off the walls, as if the place itself celebrated their newfound closeness. Emma's belly gave a little nudge, like the baby offering approval. She squeezed Mason's hand, heart brimming with emotion. They might not have all the answers yet, but for now, they had each other, and the courage to turn their unexpected connection into something real. A few weeks had passed since that first kiss, since the night Mason and Emma acknowledged that their connection was more than a fleeting rescue. In that time, they had quietly nurtured what was quickly becoming a genuine partnership. A tender intimacy settled into the penthouse. Shared meals, gentle embraces, kisses stolen in hallways or between Emma's half-day shifts at the foundation. And with each day, her belly grew more pronounced, a daily reminder of the new life soon to arrive. Morning light glimmered off the tall windows as Emma finished typing up a lesson plan at the dining table. The baby squirmed, prompting her to pause and rub her side. A soft smile tugged at her lips. She'd gotten used to these energetic movements. She glanced around. The once pristine penthouse now held scattered hints of domestic warmth. A small stack of children's books for the foundation, a vase of fresh flowers she'd bought last weekend, and, most tellingly, 2 or 3 baby items in plain sight. a high-quality stroller box leaning against the wall, a tiny blanket draped on a chair. Mason emerged from the hallway already dressed in slacks and a crisp shirt. He approached and bent to press a gentle kiss to Emma's temple. "You're up early," he remarked, setting his phone aside. "Working on more tutoring materials?" She nodded, leaning back to smile at him. "I didn't want to forget an idea I had for next week's reading sessions. The kids are so enthusiastic, it's contagious. But now I'm hungry." She placed a hand on her stomach. "Baby's demands, you know." Mason chuckled. "I'll make us something. Scrambled eggs, maybe? Toast?" "That'd be great," she said, taking the chance to stretch. As she rose, a twinge in her lower back made her wince slightly, an increasingly common occurrence as she edged closer to her due date. He noticed immediately. "Everything okay? Do you need to sit down?" Emma offered a reassuring nod. "I'm fine, just the usual backache. Dr. Harper said it's normal at this stage." Then she touched his arm gently. "Thank you for fussing. It's sweet." His expression held a mix of concern and affection. "Well, I can't help worrying." He pressed a quick kiss to her cheek, then moved into the kitchen. While Mason prepared breakfast, soft hums of activity drifting across the penthouse, Emma stepped into the spare room that was slowly transforming into a nursery. She flipped on the light, revealing light pastel walls, half-unpacked boxes of baby clothes, and a brand-new crib still in pieces. A wave of emotion welled up. Just a few months ago, she wouldn't have dared imagine having a nursery at all, let alone one so lovingly planned. She ran her palm over a tiny onesie lying on top of a box, smiling at the playful pattern of stars. Her heart fluttered with anticipation of meeting her baby, of watching them grow in a place that felt safe, cherished. Turning, she noticed the echo of her footsteps in the not-yet-furnished space. It struck her how quickly life had changed once more, from homeless worry to the promise of a real home, a real family. She felt Mason's presence at the doorway before she heard his voice. "Thinking about color schemes?" he teased gently, arms crossed in a relaxed stance. Emma turned, hugging the little onesie to her chest. "Among other things," she replied. "It's funny, I never realized how many details go into setting up a nursery. Crib mattress firmness, diaper stations, baby monitors, so many small decisions." He approached and brushed a hand over her shoulder. "We'll figure it out step by step. Though I will admit I'm not the most knowledgeable about baby gear. This is all new to me." She laughed softly. "Me too. We'll learn as we go." He gave her shoulder a final reassuring squeeze. "Breakfast is ready." They moved back to the dining nook where Mason served up scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and toast. They ate with the comfortable rhythm of two people who'd grown used to each other's routines. Halfway through, Emma's phone buzzed. A message from Linda at the foundation. She skimmed it quickly, eyes lighting up. "They loved the reading program proposal," she announced. "Linda says we can start piloting it next week if I'm up for it." Mason's mouth curved in pride. "That's fantastic. I'm not surprised. They'd be fools not to jump on your ideas." He paused, sipped his coffee. "But don't overdo it. Promise me you'll rest if you start feeling too tired." She nodded, swallowing a bite of eggs. "I will. Promise. I'll pace myself." They finished the meal and Mason stood to clear the plates. Glancing at the time, he reluctantly gathered his briefcase. "I have to head to the office. Couple of final negotiations for the next big development project. But I should be back earlier tonight. We can finally assemble that crib together." Emma smirked. "I'll try not to break any instructions if I start without you." A soft laugh escaped him. "Deal. Just don't do any heavy lifting, okay?" "Yes, sir," she teased. After a quick goodbye kiss, he headed out. Emma felt a bloom of contentment as the door closed. She rubbed her belly, whispering, "We're getting closer, little one." The day passed in a comfortable flow. Emma spent a couple of hours with her teaching materials, then took a short nap to soothe her aching back. Later, she ordered groceries, preparing for the weeks ahead when she might be less mobile. The baby rolled and kicked, each movement a promise that their arrival was on the horizon. Evening neared, and Emma, feeling a surge of energy, decided to start assembling the crib. She unboxed the parts and carefully laid them out on the nursery floor, determined not to overexert herself. She was in the midst of checking the instruction manual when the door chimed, signaling Mason's return. She called out, "In here!" and heard his footsteps come close. He stepped inside the half-finished nursery, tie loosened, a blend of curiosity and mild alarm in his eyes. "You started already? Let me help." She shrugged, grinning. "I promise not to break anything. That includes my back, so no heavy lifting. Just sorting pieces." He exhaled, relieved. "All right, let's do this carefully." Working side by side, they followed the manual's somewhat confusing diagrams. Emma sorted screws and rods, while Mason attached them to the crib's frame. The baby gave a flurry of kicks that made Emma chuckle. "She's either excited or telling us to hurry up." "She?" Mason raised an eyebrow. "Are you suspecting it's a girl?" Emma shrugged with a sheepish grin. "I don't actually know, but sometimes I catch myself saying she. Could be a hunch." He paused, expression softening. "Guess we'll find out soon enough." Carefully he tightened a bolt, then straightened to wipe a bead of sweat from his brow. "Either way, the baby's lucky to have you." Emotion welled in Emma's chest. She set down the manual. "Us," she corrected gently. "They have us." He blinked, then gave a slow nod, a hint of grateful relief in his face. "Yes," he murmured. "Us." They resumed the assembly, moving methodically until the crib's shape took form. Time slipped by in easy chatter. At one point, Emma teased him about how many times he consulted the instructions, and he shot back that he was just being thorough. He wasn't used to building anything smaller than a skyscraper. Their laughter echoed, filling the room with warmth. Finally, they stepped back to admire their handiwork. The crib stood sturdy, fresh wood shining under the overhead light. Emma's eyes glistened. She could picture a tiny bundle there soon, maybe in a pastel blanket, cooing softly. The notion tugged on her heartstrings. Without warning, a strong kick pulsed through her abdomen, so forceful it made her gasp. Mason turned, alarmed. "You all right?" She caught her breath, placing a hand over the spot. "Yeah, I think so. That was just intense." Another twinge followed, sharper this time. She frowned, pressing a palm to her side. Concern flooded Mason's features. "Is that normal?" A ripple of unease accompanied the next tightness in her belly. Was this a contraction? She checked the clock, noticing the day's hour. She wasn't due for another few weeks, but sometimes babies had their own schedule. "I'm not entirely sure," she whispered, voice wavering. "It might just be Braxton Hicks, or maybe I overdid it building the crib." Mason guided her gently to a chair, worry etched on his face. "Let me call the doctor. Or do you want to time these feelings?" She pressed a shaky breath through parted lips. The sensation intensified, then ebbed. "Let's just wait a minute. I'll see if it happens again." Her heart thumped. Even though Dr. Harper had warned her about the possibility of early contractions, the actual prospect unnerved her. Mason knelt in front of her, gaze flicking between her face and her belly. "Emma, you might be in labor. Should we head to the hospital?" A wave of pressure built again, and she gripped his hand, exhaling. After it subsided, she nodded resolutely. "Better safe than sorry, let's go." The next hour blurred in a rush of adrenaline and mild panic. Mason helped her slip on more comfortable shoes and a coat, ushering her carefully to the elevator. He phoned Dr. Harper, who agreed to meet them at the hospital. Mark arrived with the car at lightning speed, and soon they were weaving through evening traffic. Emma breathed through each contraction, if that's what they were, wondering if this was truly the baby's arrival or just a false alarm. Mason sat beside her in the back seat, phone in hand, eyes flicking worriedly between her and the road ahead. By the time they reached the maternity ward, Emma's contractions felt more regular. Dr. Harper examined her, pronouncing that labor had indeed begun. "We'll monitor you closely," she said gently, seeing Emma's mix of excitement and apprehension. "You're a bit early, but not dangerously so. Let's get you settled." Emma turned to Mason, heart pounding. "Looks like the crib might get used sooner than we planned." He tried to laugh, but emotion choked it. He held her hand as nurses led them to a room, hooking Emma to monitors that traced the baby's heartbeat. The rhythmic whoosh-whoosh grounded her in a swirl of activity. Hours passed in a haze of breathing exercises and contractions. Mason stayed at her side, stroking her hair, fetching ice chips, offering encouraging words. Emma gripped his hand through each wave of pain, tears blurring her vision. Her heart hammered with both fear and hope. So this was how their new life would truly begin. As dawn approached, Emma's world narrowed to the tension of each contraction, the beep of monitors, and the press of Mason's hand. Finally, after an intense push, a flood of relief overtook her. A piercing newborn cry split the air. Emma collapsed back, sobs mingling with ragged laughter as Dr. Harper lifted a squirming, tiny body into view. "It's a girl," the doctor announced. "Healthy lungs on her, too." Emma's chest constricted with raw emotion. She saw Mason's face pale and awestruck, a tear slipping down his cheek. A nurse gently placed the baby, a wriggling pink bundle, onto Emma's chest. The baby's cries softened at the warmth of her mother's heartbeat. Emma gazed down at her daughter, tears pouring freely. Soft, dark hair, tiny fingers gripping the front of Emma's gown, so impossibly small, yet so real. Time seemed to stop. She felt Mason's hands on her shoulders, then carefully stroking the baby's back. Their family, formed in the middle of storms and second chances, had just taken on new meaning. Dr. Harper and the nurses buzzed around, cleaning and checking, but Emma barely noticed. She was enthralled by the baby's face, the perfect shape of her nose, the roundness of her cheeks. After a moment, she lifted her gaze to Mason. He leaned in, pressing a trembling kiss to the baby's forehead, then to Emma's temple. "You did it," he whispered, voice thick with awe. "We did," Emma breathed, voice cracking. She managed a watery smile. "Hello, little one," she whispered to the baby, heart full to the brim. Beside her, Mason cupped the baby's head, his eyes shining with gratitude and love. Through tears, Emma saw the unspoken promise in his expression. They would care for this new life together, forging a future from the chance encounter that brought them under one roof. Outside, the rising sun glowed over the city, painting the hospital windows in gold. A new day, a new beginning, and in the quiet hush of that maternity room, Emma and Mason, once strangers in a storm, found their hearts entwined with the tiny, precious life cradled between them. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.